The third contraction hit like a knife, dropping me to the rug as my water broke. I clutched Derek's white khakis, begging him to stay, but he brushed me off. He said labor was instinct and told me to take a taxi so he would not miss his annual fishing tournament. As the door slammed, I knew he was meeting his mistress, Trembling. I dialed the number I had ignored for 10 years. A powerful voice answered immediately, asking who had made me cry. My name is Zara Hartwood, and as the thunder rattled the thin window panes of apartment 4B, I realized that the man I vowed to love until death was already leaving me to die. The storm outside was a Category 3 hurricane named Delta, battering the coastal city of Port Royal with a violence that shook the foundations of our cheap rental complex. But the storm inside my body was far more terrified. I was 39 weeks pregnant, and my water had just broken all over the living room rug. The liquid was warm and terrifyingly abundant, soaking into the fibers of the discount wool carpet I had bought with my own savings 6 months ago. A contraction seized my lower back, twisting my spine with the force of a rusty crowbar. I gasped, the air leaving my lungs in a sharp whistle, and collapsed onto my hands and knees. The pain was not a wave, it was a wall. It slammed into me, obliterating my vision for a second, leaving behind white spots dancing in the dim light of the hallway. Through the haze of agony, I looked up. Derek Vance stood 5 feet away, his back to me. He was meticulously packing his tackle box. He did not turn around when I hit the floor. He did not drop the expensive carbon fiber fishing rod he was polishing. He simply continued to organize his lures, arranging the neon-colored bait with the precision of a surgeon, a precision he never applied to our marriage. Derek, I wheezed, my voice cracking under the strain of another spasm. Please. It is happening. The baby is coming. He paused, holding a lure up to the light. It was a shiny silver thing, designed to catch the eye of a predator in deep water. He blew a speck of dust off it before placing it gently into the velvet-lined compartment of his case. Do not be dramatic, Zara, he said, his voice calm and detached, as if he were discussing the weather rather than his wife going into labor. My mother told me that first labors take forever. You have hours, probably another 12 hours at least. He snapped the case shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the small room. He turned to face me then, and the look in his eyes chilled me more than the amniotic fluid cooling on my skin. He looked annoyed. He looked inconvenienced. I need the hospital, I managed to say, clutching the leg of the coffee table to pull myself up, though my legs felt like jelly. We have to go now. The contractions are 5 minutes apart, maybe 4. Derek checked his watch. It was a heavy gold timepiece he had bought last month to celebrate a contract he had not actually won yet. I cannot take you, he said simply. The Golden Marlin tournament starts at 5 in the morning. If I do not get down to the marina and prep the boat now, I will miss the registration window. You know this. Zara, we talked about this. This tournament is the only way to save Vance Construction. The prize money is $50,000. $50,000. He said the number with reverence, as if it were a holy scripture. You sold my car, I whispered, the realization hitting me harder than the physical pain. 2 weeks ago, my reliable Honda Civic had vanished from the parking lot. Derek had told me he sold it to invest in better materials for a job site, promising me that the return on investment would buy me a brand new SUV before the baby arrived. I had believed him. I always believed him. But looking at the brand new, top-of-the-line fishing gear piled by the door, gear that easily cost $3,000 or $4,000, I knew exactly where the money had gone. I sold it for us, he shot back, his tone sharp, to invest in our future. And now I am going to win this tournament for us. Stop being selfish. Call a taxi. A taxi. In a hurricane. Derek, look outside, I screamed, the fear finally overriding my weakness. The wind was howling like a banshee, slamming rain against the glass so hard I thought it would shatter. The streets are flooded. No taxi is coming here. You have the truck. You have to take me. He picked up his gear bag, slinging it over his shoulder. He adjusted his pristine white polo shirt, checking his reflection in the hallway mirror. He looked like a man going to a country club brunch, not a man abandoning his wife in a storm. You are a woman, Zara. Women have been doing this in caves for thousands of years. You will be fine. Just breathe through it. I will check on you when I get a signal, but the reception is bad out on the water. He walked to the door. My heart hammered against my ribs. A frantic bird trapped in a cage. Derek. I screamed his name, crawling forward, reaching for him. My fingers brushed the hem of his khaki pants. Please, I am scared. Something feels wrong. He looked down at my hand on his pant leg with distinct distaste. He shook his leg, dislodging my grip as if I were a muddy dog jumping on clean laundry. Let go, he snapped. You are wrinkling the fabric. He opened the door. The roar of the storm burst into the apartment, smelling of ozone and wet asphalt. He stepped out into the chaotic night without looking back once. Good luck, babe, he called out over his shoulder, his voice almost swallowed by the wind. Do not call me unless it is an emergency. I need to focus. The heavy oak door slammed shut. The deadbolt clicked. I was alone. I lay there on the damp rug, staring at the wood grain of the door, waiting for him to come back, waiting for the punchline, waiting for him to realize that this was insanity, that no husband leaves his wife alone in labor during a hurricane to go fishing. I heard the engine of his Ford F-150 rumble to life in the parking lot. It was a deep, throaty growl that I used to find comforting. Now, it sounded like a beast leaving its prey to rot. I heard the tires splash through the standing water, the sound fading, until there was nothing left but the relentless drumming of the rain. He was gone. Another contraction hit. This one so violent I bit my tongue, tasting copper. I curled into a fetal position, rocking back and forth, moaning into the silence. The pain was radiating down my thighs, paralyzing me. I knew I had to move. I had to get help. I looked around for my phone. It was on the kitchen counter. Charging. No, it wasn't. It was on the side table. I dragged myself across the floor. It felt like crawling through broken glass. Every inch was a battle. My breath came in ragged gasps. One foot, then the other. I reached the side table and swiped the phone off the surface. The screen lit up. 2% battery. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the haze of pain. 2%. I had forgotten to plug it in last night because Derek had unplugged my charger to plug in his electric razor. I fumbled with the screen, my fingers slippery with sweat. I tapped the icon for the phone. I dialed 911. The call connected. There was a crackle of static, then a recorded voice. All circuits are busy. Due to severe weather conditions, emergency services are experiencing high call volume. If this is a medical emergency, please stay on the line. Current wait time is approximately 45 minutes. 45 minutes. I did not have 45 minutes. The pressure in my pelvis was immense. I felt the urge to push, a primal, terrifying instinct that I could not control. I hung up. I could not wait. I needed to call a private ambulance service. I opened the browser. Typing with shaking hands. The battery icon turned red. 1%. I tapped the first number I saw for a private transport company. It rang. Once, twice. Hello? A harried voice answered. Help, I gasped. Labor. Apartment 4, B, Elm Street Complex. Please. Lady, are you crazy? The dispatcher's voice was tinny and distant. The governor declared a state of emergency 2 hours ago. The roads are underwater. We are not rolling any units until the wind speed drops below 50 miles per hour. Stay inside. Do not go out. The line went dead. My phone screen flickered. The Apple logo appeared for a second, mocking me. And then the screen went black. No, 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 I screamed. A raw, animalistic sound that tore at my throat. I threw the dead phone across the room. It skittered across the floorboards and hit the wall with a dull thud. I was trapped. I was going to give birth alone on a dirty rug in the middle of a hurricane. And I was going to die. Derek had killed me. He had left me here to die so he could go fishing, but deep down, in a place where intuition lived, I knew he was not fishing. The Golden Marlin tournament did not start until tomorrow. Registration was open all night. He did not need to leave now. He wanted to leave. He was going to her. Serena Blackwood. I had seen the text messages on his phone a month ago. I had seen the receipts for the jewelry. I had chosen to ignore it, to believe his lies because I wanted my daughter to have a father. I wanted to believe that the man I married was just stressed, just going through a phase. I was a fool, a naive, stupid fool. A fresh wave of pain washed over me, sharper this time, accompanied by a terrifying pressure. I felt dizzy. The room was spinning. "I need help," I whispered to the empty room. My eyes landed on the bottom drawer of the TV stand. Inside that drawer, buried under a stack of old utility bills and instruction manuals, was a burner phone, an old Nokia brick from 10 years ago. I kept it there for emergencies, charged and turned off. But it wasn't just a phone, it was a promise, or rather, a broken one. My mother, on her deathbed 5 years ago, had made me swear, "Zara, we do not beg, we do not take handouts, especially not from him. We are Heartwoods. We stand on our own 2 feet. You prove to the world that you do not need the Sterling name to survive." Arthur Sterling, my godfather, the richest, most powerful man in Port Royal, the man who had loved my mother, and whom my mother had left because she refused to be a bird in a gilded cage. He had offered to pay for my college. I refused. He offered to buy me a house when I married Derek. I refused. I had spent my entire adult life proving that I could be happy and successful without his influence, without his blood money. I had chosen a simple life, a simple husband, a simple apartment, and look where that had gotten me. Abandoned, broke, dying. I looked at my stomach. I felt the baby kick. A strong, vigorous movement. This wasn't about me anymore. It wasn't about my pride. It wasn't about my mother's ghost. It was about hope. That was the name I had picked for her. Hope. I could not let hope die because I was too proud to ask for help. I dragged myself to the TV stand. I wrenched the drawer open. The Nokia was there, dusty and forgotten. I pressed the power button. The screen lit up in a dull green glow. 3 bars of battery. I did not need to look up the number. It was burned into my memory, a sequence of digits I had been taught to memorize before I learned my multiplication tables. I dialed. My thumb trembled over the call button. "I am sorry, Mom." I whispered to the ceiling. I pressed send. It rang once. Most people, billionaires especially, screened their calls. They had assistants. They had voicemails. They did not answer unknown numbers at 11 o'clock at night. Arthur Sterling was not most people. Sterling, a voice boomed. It was a voice like aged scotch and steel, deep, resonant, and commanding. It was the voice of a man who moved mountains and silenced oceans. It had been 10 years since I heard it. Tears, hot and fast, spilled down my cheeks, mixing with the sweat. I tried to speak, but only a sob escaped. "Hello?" The voice sharpened. "Who is this Godfather?" I choked out. There was a silence on the other end, a silence so profound it felt like the world had stopped spinning. "Zara." His voice lost its edge. It became soft, almost fragile. "Zara, is that you, Basso?" It was the nickname he used for me when I was a toddler because I had a deep cry. "Basso, what is wrong? Why are you crying? I need help," I stammered, shame burning my face. "I am in labor." Derek left. He took the car. "The ambulance will not come because of the storm. I am alone. I am scared." The change in his tone was instantaneous. The softness vanished, replaced by a cold, terrifying efficiency. "Where are you?" "The apartment on Elm Street." I sobbed. "Number 4. B. Stay on the line. Zara, do not hang up." I heard him shouting orders in the background. His voice was muffled, but I could hear the fury in it. "Get the Sikorsky ready." "Now, I do not care about the wind shear. I said fly it, or I will fly it myself. Get Dr. Aris on the video link. Prep the trauma team at St. Jude." He came back to the phone. Zara, listen to me. I am coming. I am coming to get you. But the storm, I whispered. To hell with the storm. Arthur growled. Nothing keeps me from my daughter. You hold on. You hear me? You hold on for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. I lay back on the floor, clutching the old Nokia like a lifeline. The pain was still there, tearing me apart, but the fear was receding. I was not alone anymore. 4 minutes later, the sound of the storm changed. The howling wind was drowned out by a rhythmic, thumping beat that shook the floorboards. It grew louder and louder until the windows rattled in their frames. A bright, blinding white light cut through the rain, illuminating the shabby living room through the balcony glass. I looked up. Hovering outside my third-floor apartment, defying the gale-force winds with impossible stability, was a sleek, black helicopter. The side of the fuselage bore the silver crest of a Lion Sterling Corp. It descended into the small, muddy courtyard of the apartment complex, flattening the overgrown hedges with the downwash. Neighbors were looking out of their windows, their faces pressed against the glass in shock. In this neighborhood, police sirens were common. Multi-million-dollar corporate helicopters were not. The helicopter touched down. The side door slid open. 3 figures in dark tactical gear jumped out, sprinting toward my building, leading them, with no raincoat. His silver hair plastered to his forehead by the rain, was a man in a tuxedo. Arthur Sterling. He was running. The most powerful man in the city was running through the mud and the rain, disregarding his Italian leather shoes, disregarding his safety. The door to my apartment burst open. Arthur stood there, his chest heaving. He scanned the room, his eyes wild, until they landed on me curled up on the rug. Zara. He crossed the room in 2 strides and fell to his knees beside me. He didn't care about the amniotic fluid. He didn't care about the blood. He scooped me up into his arms, his grip iron hard, but incredibly gentle. I have you, he whispered, his voice trembling slightly. I have you, child. You are safe now. He lifted me as if I weighed nothing. As he carried me out into the storm, shielded by his body and the umbrella of his security team, I buried my face in his tuxedo jacket. It smelled of expensive cologne, rain, and safety. For the first time in 10 years, I allowed myself to be weak. I closed my eyes and let the Godfather take over. Derek had abandoned me to the storm, but he had forgotten one thing. Storms do not scare the man who owns the sky. The transition from the chaotic, muddy hell of my apartment complex to the sterile, gleaming sanctuary of St. Jude International Hospital was so jarring it felt like I had hallucinated the entire journey. One moment, I was shivering in the damp cold. The next, I was being wheeled down a corridor that smelled of lavender and antiseptic, surrounded by a phalanx of nurses who moved with the silent efficiency of the King's Guard. We did not go to the emergency intake. We did not stop at the front desk. The gurney I lay on bypassed the waiting room entirely, whisked into a private elevator that required a retinal scan to access, as the doors slid shut. Cutting off the noise of the storm and the general hospital chaos, I saw the floor indicator light up, the 30th floor, the VIP wing. This was not a hospital ward. It was a fortress of solitude and luxury designed for foreign dignitaries, royalty, and apparently, the goddaughter of Arthur Sterling. The entire floor had been cleared. I could hear the distinct sound of security doors locking down, sealing us off from the rest of the world. The room they wheeled me into was larger than the entire apartment I shared with Derek. It had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, though currently, all I could see was the driving rain lashing against the hurricane-proof glass. There were no thin, scratchy blankets here. The nurses covered me in warmed Egyptian cotton sheets. A doctor, whose name was embroidered on his white coat as Dr. Aris, chief of obstetrics, was already at my bedside, checking the fetal heart rate monitor with a calmness that finally allowed my own heart to slow its frantic rhythm. Arthur stood in the corner of the room. He had discarded his ruined tuxedo jacket. His white dress shirt was soaked through and stained with mud. Clinging to his chest, He looked every one of his 70 years in that harsh fluorescent light. Yet he also looked timeless, like a statue weathered by centuries of storms but still standing. He watched the monitors with the intensity of a hawk. When I let out a groan as another contraction squeezed my midsection, he flinched. It was a small movement, barely a twitch of his facial muscles, but for a man who famously negotiated billion-dollar hostile takeovers without blinking. It was a revelation. "I am sorry," he whispered, stepping closer to the bed. His hand, calloused and warm, took mine. Tears, unbidden and shocking, welled in his steel-gray eyes. "I am so sorry. Zara, I should have been there sooner. I should have burned that wretched apartment down the day you moved in." "Don't," I managed to gasp out, gripping his hand as the pain peaked. "You respected my wishes. I wanted to do it on my own, and look what it cost you," Arthur replied, his voice cracking. He brushed a wet strand of hair from my forehead. "I watched you, Zara, for 10 years. I had my men keep a distance. I saw you struggle. I saw you count pennies at the grocery store. I saw you marry that man. I bit my tongue because I promised your mother I would let you find your own path. But tonight, when he left you, that was not a stumble on your path. That was an execution." He squeezed my hand. "He is dead to me. Zara, the moment he walked out that door, he ceased to exist. I did not have the energy to argue. I did not want to argue. The pain was consuming me again, a tidal wave that demanded all my focus. The labor was hard, but it was no longer lonely. Doctor, Aris and his team were incredible. They guided me, supported me, and managed the pain with an expertise that money usually cannot buy unless you have all the money in the city. And Arthur never left. He stood by my head, wiping my brow, whispering words of encouragement that I had not heard since I was a little girl sitting on his knee in his mahogany library. At 3 a.m, just as the eye of the hurricane began to pass over Port Royal, a cry pierced the air. It was high, clear, and furious. "Doctor," Aris lifted a small, wriggling bundle into the air. "It is a girl," he announced, his voice filled with professional delight. "A strong, healthy baby girl." They placed her on my chest. She was warm, slick, and heavy with life. Her skin was flushed pink, her tiny fists clenching at the air as if she were already trying to fight the world. I looked down at her, at the tiny face that looked so much like mine, and the hole in my chest that Derek had ripped open began to fill with something else, something fierce. "Hope," I whispered, kissing the top of her damp head. "Her name is Hope." "Hope," Arthur repeated, testing the weight of the word. He leaned over, gazing at the infant with an expression of reverence I had never seen on his face. He extended a finger, and her tiny hand instinctively curled around it. Arthur let out a breath that sounded like a sob. He looked at me, his eyes fierce. "Listen to me. Zara, listen well. This child is not just a baby. She is the future. From this moment forward, she is the sole heir to the Sterling Empire. She will never know hunger. She will never know cold. And she will certainly never know the feeling of being abandoned by a man who is unworthy of breathing the same air as her." He straightened up, his demeanor shifting from grandfather to godfather. "I have already drafted the trust documents. They will be signed before the sun rises." I nodded, exhausted but content. For the first time in years, I felt safe. I closed my eyes, letting the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor lull me into a doze, but while I lay in the safest room in the city, surrounded by love and power, the man who was legally the father of my child was living a very different reality. Arthur did not just rescue me, he had eyes everywhere. And as I rested, his security team was already compiling the dossier that would fuel my resurrection. Derek was not fishing. 20 miles off the coast, tucked away in a sheltered cove that blocked the worst of the storm surges, lay the Siren's Call, a 150-foot super yacht owned by the Blackwood family. The storm raged outside, but inside the stabilized hull of the yacht, the party was in full swing. The video feed on the tablet Arthur handed me later was crystal clear. It had been pulled from the social media stories of the guests, a collection of Port Royal's most vacuous socialites. The main salon of the yacht was decorated in gold and white leather. Champagne flowed like water. The bass of electronic dance music thumped against the walls, and there, in the center of the white leather sofa, sat Derek. He was not wearing his fishing gear. He was wearing a linen suit that cost more than my wedding dress. He held a crystal flute of vintage Dom Perignon in one hand and a cigar in the other. He looked nothing like the stressed, broke contractor who had complained about the price of prenatal vitamins yesterday. He looked arrogant. He looked flush with cash, and draped over his lap, laughing with her head thrown back, was Serena Blackwood. She was stunning in a way that was entirely manufactured: perfect teeth, perfect skin, perfect hair that defied the humidity. She fed Derek a strawberry, her long manicured fingers lingering on his lips. "So?" one of the other guests asked, a man with slicked back hair, shouting over the music. "Where's the ball and chain tonight? Derek, I thought she was due any day now." Derek laughed. It was a cruel, ugly sound. "Oh, do not remind me," he sneered, taking a sip of champagne. "She is at home, probably whining to the cat. Honestly, she is such a drag. She thinks the world revolves around her uterus." A ripple of laughter went through the group. "But isn't she? Like, in labor?" Serena asked, giggling as she traced the line of his jaw. "Probably." Derek shrugged, blowing smoke into the air. "She is always complaining about something." "Derek, my back hurts." "Derek, we have no money. It is exhausting. I told her I had to work. You know how it is. You have to make sacrifices for the family." He emphasized the word family with a wink at Serena. "She is just so heavy." Derek continued, warming up to his audience. "And I do not mean just the pregnancy weight. I mean her soul. She is a peasant at heart. She has no ambition. She is content living in that shoebox apartment. I need someone who matches my energy, someone who belongs in this world." Like Serena, the slick-haired man teased. Derek pulled Serena closer, kissing her neck openly. Exactly like Serena. "Zara is just a placeholder, a mistake I made when I was young and stupid. Once the baby is out and I secure this deal with your father. Serena, I am cutting her loose. I will give her the apartment. It is a dump anyway. She can rot in it." I watched the screen, my blood turning to ice. The man I had cooked for, cleaned for, and loved for 5 years was dissecting our marriage for the amusement of strangers. He called me a peasant, a placeholder, but the final blow came not from his mouth, but from Serena's wrist. Arthur swiped the screen to a new image. It was an Instagram post Serena had uploaded 10 minutes ago. The photo was a close-up of her hand holding a glass of champagne, intertwined with Derek's hand. The caption read, "Caught the biggest catch of the season. Sorry, ladies. This marlin is mine. Golden marlin winner, love him." But my eyes were not on the caption. They were on the watch strapped to Derek's wrist in the photo. It was a Patek Philippe Nautilus, a watch worth easily $80,000, 3 months ago. Derek had come home pale and shaking. He told me he had lost his watch, a much cheaper Tag Heuer, at a job site. He said he was devastated. He said we had to tighten our belts to make up for the loss. I had canceled my cable subscription. I had stopped buying organic food. I had started sewing my own maternity clothes to save money. And all this time, he had not lost a watch. He had upgraded. He had spent $80,000 on a watch while I was clipping coupons for diapers. The sound of the monitor in the hospital room seemed to speed up. Beep, beep, beep. Arthur watched me closely. He was waiting for the breakdown. He was waiting for me to scream, to throw the tablet, to weep for the betrayal. But the tears did not come. I looked at the photo. I looked at Derek's smug, drunken face. I looked at Serena's manicured hand claiming ownership of my husband. Something inside me snapped. It was not a loud snap. It was the quiet, terrifying sound of a connection being severed. The Zara who begged for affection, the Zara who believed in forgiveness, died in that hospital bed. I handed the tablet back to Arthur. My hand was steady. "Arthur," I said. My voice sounded different. It was lower, colder. It sounded like his voice. "Yes." "My child." "You cannot kill him," I said calmly. Arthur raised an eyebrow. "I can ruin him before breakfast. I can have him arrested for tax fraud, which I know he is committing. I can have his company seized. I can have him blacklisted from every construction site in the state. I can make him disappear so thoroughly that even his mother will forget his name." "No," I shook my head. "That is too fast. That is too merciful." I sat up, wincing slightly as the stitches pulled, but ignoring the pain. I looked at my godfather, the most feared man in the city, and for the first time, he saw his own reflection in my eyes. "He thinks I am a peasant," I said softly. "He thinks I am a helpless, stupid housewife who believes whatever lie he feeds me. He thinks he has won." I reached out and touched the screen, tapping on Derek's face. I want him to believe that. I want him to think he's getting away with it. I want him to think he is the king of the world. I want him to climb so high that when he falls, there will be nothing left of him to scrape off the pavement. Arthur smiled. It was a dark, predatory smile. "What do you need?" he asked. "I need you to stay dead." I said, "At least to the public. No one can know that Zara Hartwood is connected to Arthur Sterling. Not yet." I looked at the window, where the storm was finally beginning to break. "Take me back to the apartment tomorrow," I said. "I need to be there when he comes home. I need to play the part of the grieving, exhausted wife one last time." "But, Zara," Arthur protested, "the apartment is filthy. It is not safe. Make it safe," I ordered. "Clean it up. Put me back in that hellhole. Because that is where the trap begins." Arthur studied me for a long moment. He saw the resolve in my jaw. He saw the cold fire in my eyes. He nodded slowly. "As you wish," he said. He took his phone out of his pocket and dialed a number. "Prepare the team," he said into the phone. "We have a performance to stage." I looked down at Hope, sleeping peacefully in her bassinet. She would never know the weak woman I used to be. She would only know the mother who burned the world down to keep her warm. Derek Vance wanted a drama. He wanted to treat his life like a game. Fine, game on. The silence in the apartment was not peaceful. It was heavy, like the air before a lightning strike. I sat in the rocking chair by the window, the same spot where I used to knit booties and dream of a happy family. Now, I was just waiting. Hope was asleep in her bassinet, a tiny miracle wrapped in a soft pink blanket that Arthur had insisted cost more than my wedding dress. Though I had removed the designer tags to maintain the charade, it had been 2 days, 48 hours since Derek Vance walked out that door and left me to die. Arthur's team had been efficient. They had scrubbed the apartment clean of the amniotic fluid and the desperation. They had stocked the fridge with cheap groceries to make it look like I had been surviving on my own. They had even placed a pile of dirty laundry in the hamper to simulate the passage of time. I was back on the stage. The curtains were up, and I was just waiting for the villain to make his entrance. At 6 p.m, the lock tumbled. My heart gave a painful thud against my ribs, not out of love, but out of a sudden, violent surge of adrenaline. I forced my face into a mask of exhaustion and relief. I practiced the tremor in my hands. I had to be the victim. I had to be the fool. The door opened, and Derek walked in. He looked like a man who had practiced his entrance. His shoulders were slumped, his feet dragged, and he leaned against the doorframe as if the weight of the world were resting on his spine. He was wearing the same clothes he had left in the khaki pants and the white polo, but they were rumpled now, stained with what looked like grease and salt water. But as he stepped closer, the smell hit me. It was faint, layered beneath the scent of stale sweat and ocean brine. But my nose, heightened by postpartum hormones, picked it up instantly. It was a cloying, floral sweetness, jasmine and expensive musk. It was Chanel No. 5. Serena Blackwood's signature scent. It was clinging to his neck, woven into the fabric of his shirt. He smelled like another woman. He dropped his gear bag on the floor with a heavy thud. He looked at me, then his eyes drifted down to the bundle in my arms. He did not rush over. He did not smile. He did not fall to his knees and ask forgiveness. "So," he said, his voice flat and raspy, "you popped it out." "Huh?" I stared at him, letting the silence stretch for a heartbeat too long. I wanted to scream. I wanted to claw his eyes out. Instead, I blinked back fake tears and nodded. "Yes, Derek," I whispered, clutching Hope tighter. She was born 2 nights ago. While the storm was raging, Derek let out a long sigh. Rubbing his face with his hands, he walked into the kitchen and opened the fridge. Grabbing a beer, he cracked it open and took a long swig before he even looked at me again. "God, what a nightmare," he said, leaning against the counter. "You have no idea what I have been through. Zara, I have no idea. I almost died on this floor." "What happened?" I asked, my voice trembling. I was so scared. "Derek, I called you. I called you 100 times. Why didn't you answer?" He gestured vaguely towards the window with his beer bottle. "The storm, obviously," he snapped, as if I were an idiot for asking. "We got out to the deep water, and the engine died. Just cut out completely. The electrical system fried. We were drifting for 2 days. Zara, 2 days with 40-foot waves crashing over the bow. I thought I was going to die out there." He took another drink, his eyes shifting away from mine. There was no signal. He continued, the lie rolling off his tongue with practiced ease. The radio was dead. My phone was dead. We were just sitting ducks. I was terrified. All I could think about was you. He looked at me then, trying to summon a look of concern, but it didn't reach his eyes. His eyes were cold, calculating. He was checking to see if I bought it. "Oh, Derek," I breathed, letting my shoulders sag. "That sounds horrible. I am so glad you are safe." "Yeah, well, I made it," he grunted. He finished the beer and crushed the can in his hand. "Look, I felt bad about missing the event, so I stopped at the gas station on the way back." He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a plastic bag. He tossed it onto the sofa next to me. "I got these." I looked inside the bag. It was a pack of generic, store-brand diapers, the cheapest ones available. They were rough like sandpaper and probably not even the right size. "Thank you," I said softly. It was then, as he reached up to scratch his nose, that I saw it. On the ring finger of his left hand, there was a mark. It was a pale band of skin, slightly indented, contrasting with the fresh, reddish tan on the rest of his hand. He had been wearing a ring, a wide band. But he wasn't wearing his wedding ring he had lost that 6 months ago and never replaced it. He had been wearing a ring with Serena. He must have taken it off in the car before coming up. The tan line proved he had been sitting in the sun, drinking champagne, playing husband to another woman while I was bleeding. I felt a cold rage settle in my stomach, turning my blood to ice. "I am going to grab a shower," Derek said, peeling off his sticky shirt. "I smell like dead fish." He walked toward the bathroom, unbuckling his belt. He didn't ask to hold the baby. He didn't ask her name. He didn't even ask if she had 10 fingers and 10 toes. He threw his pants into the hamper and kicked the bathroom door shut. A moment later, I heard the water running. I looked at the coffee table. He had left his phone. It was a reckless mistake, born of arrogance. He thought I was the same stupid Zara who never snooped, who trusted him blindly. He thought he was untouchable. I stood up. My body was still sore, my stitches pulling with every movement, but I moved with a predator's focus. I placed Hope gently in her bassinet and walked to the table. I picked up his phone. It was locked, of course. I typed in the passcode 2005, his birthday. It unlocked. He hadn't even bothered to change it. Why would he? In his mind, I was furniture. Furniture does not check phones. I reached into the pocket of my robe and pulled out the small, black flash drive Arthur had given me. It was a military-grade extraction tool. "Plug it in. Wait for the green light. Pull it out," Arthur had said. "It installs a ghost mirror. We will see everything he sees. We will hear everything he hears, even if he deletes it. I plugged the drive into the charging port of his phone. The screen flickered. A small progress bar appeared. 10%, 30%. The water in the shower turned off. My heart hammered against my throat. I stared at the bar. 60%. Zara. Derek yelled from the bathroom, "Where is my towel?" "I am getting it," I yelled back, my voice pitching high with panic. "Just a second." 80%. I heard the bathroom door handle turn. "Hurry up," he grumbled. "I'm freezing." 95%. The door creaked open. Derek stepped out, a towel wrapped around his waist, water dripping from his hair. He looked right at me. I was standing by the bassinet, rocking it gently. His phone was back on the table, exactly where he left it. "Here," I said, pointing to a fresh towel I had placed on the chair earlier. "I laid one out for you." He grunted, grabbing the towel and rubbing his hair vigorously. He didn't notice my trembling hands. He didn't notice the tiny black drive tucked back into my pocket. He walked over to the table and snatched up his phone. "I have to make some calls," he said, turning his back to me. "Checking on the crew, making sure everyone got back safe. Don't disturb me." He marched into the second bedroom, the room we had planned to turn into a nursery, which he now used as his home office. He slammed the door. I waited 5 seconds. Then I reached into my other pocket and pulled out my own phone, a new, secure device Arthur had provided. I put in a single wireless earbud. I tapped the app icon that looked like a simple calculator. Immediately, the sound of Derek's voice filled my ear. It was crystal clear, as if he were standing right next to me. "Baby," Derek's voice crooned. The tone was sickeningly sweet, a tone he hadn't used with me in years. "Yeah, I am back at the dungeon." I heard Serena's laugh on the other end. It was a tinkling, cruel sound. "Did she buy it?" Serena asked. "Hook, line, and sinker." Derek laughed, the sound vibrating through my skull. "She is so stupid. Serena, I told her the engine died and we were drifting. She actually looked sorry for me. She apologized." "Can you believe that she apologized to me for being worried? God, she is pathetic," Serena sneered. "Did she show you the brat?" "Yeah, it's sleeping or whatever," Derek said dismissively. "Look, I can't stay on long. I need to get this done fast. The smell in here is depressing. It smells like milk and poverty." "Stick to the plan." "Derek," Serena's voice hardened. "My dad is pressuring me about the investment. He needs to see that your assets are liquid. We need that collateral." I know, Derek said, his voice dropping lower. "I am going to do it tonight. I will tell her the business is in trouble because of the storm. I will tell her we need a bridge loan to cover payroll or they will come after our personal assets. She will sign the house over. She always does what I tell her. Make sure she signs the power of attorney too," Serena added. "That way we can sell the dump without her even being at the closing. I don't want to see her face again." "Don't worry," Derek said. "That house is as good as ours. It is the only thing of value her dead mother left her. Once I get that signature, we can dump the property, pay off my gambling debts, and put the rest into the buy-in for your dad's company. Then I will serve her the divorce papers." "What about the kid?" Serena asked. "She can keep it," Derek scoffed. "I don't want a screaming baggage. She can take the kid and go live in a shelter for all I care. Once we are married, Serena, we will have our own kids, purebreds, not whatever this is." I sat there in the dim light of the living room, the earbud feeling like a hot coal in my ear. He wasn't just leaving me. He was planning to steal my mother's house, the house she had worked 3 jobs to pay off, the house she had left to me as a safety net. He was going to steal it, sell it to pay off gambling debts I didn't even know existed, and then discard me and Hope on the street. Purebreds. He called his own daughter a mongrel. My hand flew to my chest, clutching the silver locket that hung there. It was a vintage piece, heavy and cool against my skin. Inside was a picture of my mother. Arthur had given it to me at the hospital. This was hers. He had told me. She wore it every day. Now it is your armor. I squeezed the metal so hard the edges dug into my palm. I did not cry. The time for crying was over. The sadness had evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. Derek Vance was not a man. He was a cancer. And you do not negotiate with cancer. You cut it out. I looked at the phone screen. The conversation was still going. They were laughing now, planning their honeymoon in the Maldives, spending money that they were going to steal from me. A notification popped up on my screen. A text message. It was from a number listed only as A. The net is set. The bankers are ready. The lawyers are ready. We are just waiting for your signal. Do you want to pull the trigger? I looked at the closed door of the office. I could hear Derek's muffled laughter through the wood, echoing the clear sound in my ear. I typed back, my fingers flying across the glass. Not yet. Let him think he has won. Let him get the signature. I want him to feel the victory before I rip it out of his throat. I took the earbud out and stood up. I walked to the mirror in the hallway. I looked at myself. My eyes were red-rimmed. My hair was messy. And I wore a stained nursing robe. I looked like a victim. Perfect. I walked toward the office door and knocked timidly. "Derek," I called out, injecting a wobble into my voice. "Can I talk to you? I am worried about money." Inside the room, the laughter stopped abruptly. "I have to go," I heard him whisper. "She is coming to the slaughter." He opened the door. He arranged his face into a mask of stressed concern, but I saw the gleam of triumph in his eyes. "What is it, babe?" he asked, putting a hand on my shoulder. "I was thinking," I said, looking down at my feet. "If the business is in trouble, maybe there is something I can do to help. I have the deed to Mom's house." Derek smiled. It was the smile of a wolf looking at a lamb. "Actually," he said softly, "there is something. Why don't you come sit down? We can figure this out together." I walked into the room, stepping voluntarily into the trap he had set, knowing full well that I was the one holding the dynamite. The air in the home office was thick with the smell of stale coffee and desperation. Derek sat behind his desk, surrounded by stacks of paper that he thought were secrets. But thanks to the ghost mirror on his phone, I knew exactly what they were. They were overdue notices, final warnings, threatening letters from suppliers who had not been paid in 6 months. Vance Construction was not just struggling. It was a corpse that Derek was trying to animate with lies and stolen money. He had siphoned off nearly $300,000 from the company accounts to fund Serena Blackwood's lifestyle, the yacht parties. The jewelry, the first-class flights. Now, the hole in the balance sheet was too big to hide, and the auditors were coming next month. I sat on the small, uncomfortable chair across from him, clutching my hands in my lap, playing the role of the nervous, uneducated housewife. Derek cleared his throat, shuffling a document toward me. He tried to smile, but it looked more like a grimace. "Zara, honey," he began, his voice taking on that patronizing tone he used when he wanted something. "We need to talk about the future, about Hope's future." "Is something wrong?" I asked, widening my eyes. No, nothing is wrong," he said quickly. "But having a baby changes things. It makes you realize how fragile life is. I have been talking to my financial advisor, and we think it is crucial to set up a comprehensive life insurance policy and an education fund for her right now." He tapped the thick stack of papers. "This is a protection plan." He lied. "It secures everything, but because the market is a bit volatile right now, the bank needs some collateral to lock in the low interest rates. I need you to sign off on using your mother's house as a temporary security pledge." I looked at the papers. The header did not say life insurance, in bold, predatory letters. It read, "Home Equity Line of Credit, High-Risk Asset Liquidation Authorization." He wasn't buying insurance. He was mortgaging the only thing I owned to pay off his debts, so he could look clean for Serena's father. I knew from the wiretap that Serena had given him an ultimatum: Daddy won't invest a dime in a man with baggage or bad credit. "Fix your books, Derek, or we are done." "Oh, Derek," I said, my voice trembling. You know I promised Mom I would never risk the house. That is all I have left of her. Derek's face hardened. The mask slipped for a second. Do you trust me or not? Zara, he snapped. I am the businessman here. I am the one bringing in the money. That house is just sitting there, rotting. Do you want Hope to go to a community college? Do you want her to struggle like you did? Or do you want her to have a future? He was weaponizing my daughter against me. It was low, even for him. Of course I want her to have a future, I whispered. Then sign the damn papers. He pushed a cheap ballpoint pen toward me. It is just a formality. I will pay off the loan in 2 months once the big contracts come in. The bank won't even touch the deed. I reached out, my hand shaking. I picked up his pen, then hesitated. I patted my robe pocket. Actually, I said, pulling out a sleek black fountain pen. Can I use this? It was the pen I used to sign our marriage license. I feel like it is good luck, Derek rolled his eyes, clearly annoyed by my sentimentality. Fine, whatever. Just sign on the X. I uncapped the pen. It was a Mont Blanc, a gift Arthur had sent via courier along with the diapers, but it wasn't filled with standard ink. The cartridge contained a chemically unstable polymer developed by Sterling Corp's R&D department for corporate espionage. It looked like deep, permanent blue ink. It dried instantly, but upon exposure to oxygen for more than 4 hours, the chemical bonds would disintegrate completely, leaving the paper as blank as the day it was made. I looked at Derek one last time. I saw the greed in his eyes. I saw the contempt. I lowered the pen to the paper. Zara Hartwood. I signed my name with a flourish. I signed the mortgage deed. I signed the loan agreement. I signed the personal guarantee. There, I said, capping the pen. For Hope. Derek snatched the papers away before the ink was even dry. He didn't check the signature. He just saw the victory. He shoved them into a manila envelope. You did the right thing, he said, his mood instantly lifting. You won't regret this. He stood up, ready to dismiss me, but I didn't move. It was time to set the second jaw of the trap. Derek, I said, since you are talking about big contracts, I saw something on the news while I was in the hospital. I don't know if it is important, but it looked huge. He paused, looking at his watch. What is it? Make it quick. I heard the nurses talking about the West Harbor Revitalization Project, I said, keeping my voice innocent. They said a new development group is accepting sealed bids until midnight tonight. They said the city is offering a 300% return on the initial bond for whoever wins the primary contract. Derek froze. The West Harbor project was a ghost. It was a shell corporation set up by Arthur 3 days ago. It had a website, a fake board of directors, and a very real-looking prospectus, but it owned no land and had no permits. It was a mirage designed for one purpose: to drain Derek dry. West Harbor. Derek frowned. I thought that project was dead in the water years ago. That is what everyone thinks, I said, leaning forward. But the nurse her husband works in the zoning office. She said the approval just went through secretly. She said only the insiders know about the deadline because they want to keep the competition low. I saw the gears turning in Derek's head. He prided himself on being an insider. The idea that there was a secret deal happening without him made him crazy. 300% return, he muttered. That is what she said. I shrugged. But it is probably too expensive. She said the buy-in is $500,000 cash. Derek looked at the envelope in his hand, the money he had just stolen from me. Then he looked at his computer. Get out, he said suddenly. I have work to do. Okay, I said softly. I will go feed the baby. I walked out of the office and closed the door. I didn't need to listen at the keyhole. I went straight to the kitchen, put in my earbud, and listened to him make the call. Get me Reynolds at the bank, Derek barked into his phone. Yes, now I have the collateral. I need to liquidate the equity immediately. And I need a bridge loan. Max it out. Yes, everything. I am putting it all on the West Harbor bid. He was doing it. He was taking the money from my mother's house, combining it with the last remnants of his company's operating capital, and borrowing even more from high-interest lenders to bid on a project that did not exist. He was betting the farm, the company, and his soul on a lie I had just fed him. While he was on the phone, screaming at bankers to move faster, I opened my laptop on the kitchen counter. I logged into our joint savings account. It wasn't much, about $12,000. My savings, the money I had scraped together from freelance editing jobs over the years. Derek rarely checked this account because he thought it was chump change, but today, he would need every penny to hit that $500,000 buy-in. I initiated a transfer. Destination, the Hope Heartwood, irrevocable trust. Amount $12,450. Confirm. The screen flashed. Success. The joint account balance dropped to 0. 10 minutes later, I heard a crash from the office. Derek had evidently checked the joint account and found it empty. He stormed into the kitchen, his face purple. "Where is the money?" he screamed. "The savings account. It is empty." I looked up from the bottle I was warming. "Oh, that I paid the hospital bill, Derek, and I prepaid the pediatrician for the first year. You said we had plenty of money coming in, so I thought—" He looked like he was going to hit me. His hand twitched, but he needed to maintain the facade of the successful businessman, especially if he was about to become a millionaire from the West Harbor deal. "You stupid woman," he hissed. "You do not touch the finances without asking me. That was capital." "I am sorry," I whimpered. "I didn't know." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing the small kitchen. "Fine, whatever. It is peanuts compared to what I am about to make. I will cover the difference with the credit cards." He stormed back to the office. He was too far gone. The greed had blinded him completely. He didn't care about the $12,000 because he was chasing the $5 million he thought the West Harbor project would yield. By 6 o'clock that evening, the deed was done. Derek had wired $500,000 money he had stolen, borrowed, and leveraged into the escrow account of Port Royal Development Group. He came out of the office wearing his best suit. He looked manic. High on adrenaline and arrogance. "Get dressed," he ordered. "We are going out." "Out?" I asked. "But the baby." "The neighbor can watch the brat," he said. "We are going to Le Jardin. I have to celebrate. I just made the deal of the century. Zara, I am going to be the king of this city." He wanted an audience, and he wanted me there as a prop, the dowdy wife to emphasize his own brilliance. "Wear something nice," he added, looking at my robe with disgust. "Try not to look like a laundress." I went to the bedroom. I didn't have anything nice that fit. My maternity clothes were loose, and my pre-pregnancy clothes were too tight. I chose a simple, worn navy blue dress that hung loosely on my frame. I pulled my hair back into a severe bun. No makeup, no jewelry. I looked exactly like what he wanted a shadow. Le Jardin was the most expensive restaurant in Port Royal. Crystal chandeliers, velvet curtains, and a menu where the appetizers cost more than my weekly grocery bill. Derek strode in like he owned the place, greeting the maitre d' by name. Though the man looked at him with barely concealed boredom, he had invited 3 of his friends' men who were actually just leeches who hung around him when he was buying drinks. They were already at the table, ordering bottles of wine. "Gentlemen," Derek announced, pulling out my chair but not looking at me. "Tonight, we drink to the West Harbor. The bid is in. It is a lock." They cheered, clinking glasses. I sat silently, sipping water. Derek ordered caviar, lobster, Wagyu beef. He was spending money he didn't have to celebrate a victory that wasn't real. Then, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The heavy oak doors of the restaurant swung open. The chatter in the room dipped noticeably. A woman walked in. She was wearing a dress that was not just red. It was the color of a fresh arterial wound. It was silk, backless, and clung to her body like a second skin. Her blonde hair was a cascading waterfall of perfect waves. Diamonds glittered at her throat and ears. Serena Blackwood. She didn't wait to be seated. She walked straight toward our table, her heels clicking on the marble floor like a countdown. Derek practically leaped out of his chair, his face flushed with a mixture of lust and panic. "Serena," he exclaimed, "I didn't know you would be here." "I heard there was a celebration," she purred, her voice smooth and dangerous. She looked at the men, who were all staring at her with slack jaws. Then, her eyes slid to me. It was the first time we had ever made eye contact. Her eyes were blue, but cold, like glacier ice. She looked me up and down, taking in the cheap fabric of my dress, my messy hair, the dark circles under my eyes. Her lip curled in a microscopic sneer. "And this must be—" She paused, as if struggling to recall a trivial fact. "Zara." "Yes," Derek said quickly, stepping between us slightly, as if to shield her from my poverty. "This is Zara, my wife." "Charmed," Serena said, extending a hand. She didn't really offer it to shake. She offered it to be kissed. I stood up. I took her hand. It was cold and dry. "Hello, Serena," I said. "Derek talks about you often. He says you are a crucial partner." Serena laughed. It was a sound like breaking glass. "Oh, I am sure he does," she said, withdrawing her hand and wiping it subtly on her dress. "Strategic partner. Actually, we have big plans for the city. Isn't that right, Derek?" "Absolutely," Derek beamed, sweating slightly. "Serena's family is very interested in the West Harbor project, too. We like winners." "Derek," she said, her eyes locking onto him. "Only winners." She turned back to me. "You are a lucky woman, Zara. Most men would have folded under the pressure Derek has been under, but he is willing to do whatever it takes to succeed. Sacrifice is such a noble trait. Don't you think?" She was mocking me. She knew about the house. She knew about the loans. She knew he had sacrificed me. "Sacrifice is interesting," I replied, my voice steady. "But sometimes, when you sacrifice the wrong thing, you end up losing everything." The table went quiet. Derek's smile faltered. Serena's eyes narrowed slightly. She hadn't expected the mouse to squeak. "Is that so?" Serena challenged. "Well, let's hope Derek knows what he is betting with." "Oh, I do," Derek interjected loudly, laughing nervously. "I am betting on a sure thing. Waiter, more champagne, a glass for Ms. Blackwood." "No, thank you," Serena said, checking her phone. "I have a late meeting. I just wanted to stop by and congratulate you on finalizing your assets. My father will be very pleased to hear that your books are in order." She leaned in close to Derek, whispering something in his ear that made him flush a deep crimson. Then she turned and walked away, the red dress flowing behind her like a trail of blood. I sat back down. Derek collapsed into his chair, looking like a man who had just run a marathon. "She is amazing," one of his friends mumbled. "She is the future," Derek said, staring after her. "And so am I." He lifted his glass. "To the future." I lifted my water glass. "To the future," I echoed, inside my pocket. I fingered the small plastic device I had swiped from the table when I stood up to greet Serena. It was her car key fob. I hadn't taken it to steal her car. I had taken it to plant the bug. While they were ogling her, I had slipped a microtransmitter into the leather casing of her keychain. Derek thought the dinner was over. He thought the deal was done. But as I watched him gorge himself on lobster, unaware that his bank account was empty and his mortgage papers were already fading into blank sheets of paper in the envelope on his desk, I knew the truth. The appetizer was finished. The main course was about to be served. Serena did not leave. Perhaps the allure of tormenting me was stronger than her fictional late-night meeting. Or perhaps she simply wanted to ensure her investment, meaning my husband, was performing his role correctly. She pivoted on her 4-inch stilettos, the red silk of her dress swirling around her legs like a matador's cape, and signaled the waiter to bring another chair. "Actually," she purred, sliding into the seat directly next to Derek, forcing him to shift his body away from me. "My meeting was rescheduled. I think I will stay. It is not every day we get to celebrate a man of vision." She placed her clutch a limited edition Hermes Birkin that cost more than my mother's car on the table. It sat there like a boundary stone, marking the line between her world and mine. The contrast was deliberate and brutal. Serena was aflame in crimson silk, her skin glowing with the sheen of expensive facials and summers in Saint Tropez. I was a shadow in my ill-fitting navy dress, my nursing bra digging into my shoulders, my face pale and devoid of makeup. She smelled of jasmine and money. I smelled of baby powder and exhaustion. "So, Zara," Serena began, leaning her chin on her hand and looking at me with wide, mock-sympathetic eyes. "Derek tells me you are having a hard time bouncing back. Post-pregnancy bodies can be so stubborn, can't they?" She reached out and patted my arm, her fingers lingering on the loose fabric of my sleeve. "My trainer has a slot open," she continued, her voice dripping with poison disguised as sisterhood. "He works with all the Victoria's Secret models. Though, honestly, with your bone structure, maybe you should try Pilates first. It is gentler for older mothers." I was 28, Serena was 30. But in this moment, she was the ageless goddess, and I was the ancient, crumbling ruin. "I am focusing on the baby right now," I said, keeping my voice low and submissive. "My body is the least of my worries." Derek laughed, a harsh, barking sound. He was already on his third glass of wine. His face flushed. "She does not care about looks," Derek sneered, trying to impress the other men at the table. "Zara is all about comfort. She would wear sweatpants to a funeral if I let her. Honestly, it is embarrassing sometimes. I have to remind her that she is Mrs. Derek Vance. Not a bag lady." The men chuckled nervously. They were uncomfortable. But money makes people tolerate a lot of cruelty. The waiter arrived with the menus. He handed the leather-bound book to Serena first, then the men, and finally me. I opened it. The prices were astronomical, but I was hungry. I had not eaten a proper meal in 2 days because I had been too busy acting out this tragedy. "I think I will have the Wagyu ribeye," I said, pointing to the item. "And the truffle mashed potatoes." Derek snatched the menu out of my hands before the waiter could write it down. "Don't be ridiculous," he snapped. "You won't appreciate that. Your palate is too simple." He looked at the waiter. "She will have the roasted chicken breast, no sauce, and a side salad. She is trying to lose the baby weight." He turned to Serena with a grin. "And for the lady—" "I will have the lobster thermidor," Serena said, smiling at him. "And bring a bottle of the 1996 Cristal. We need to toast properly." I sat there, my hands clenched in my lap. The humiliation burned my cheeks, hot and stinging. He was denying me food. He was shaming me in public. He was stripping away every layer of dignity I had left. But dignity is a cheap price to pay for revenge. "Excuse me," I mumbled, standing up. "I need to use the restroom." "Make it quick," Derek muttered, already pouring champagne for Serena. "We are discussing business." I walked toward the back of the restaurant, my legs feeling heavy. The restroom at Le Jardin was nicer than my living room. It had marble floors, fresh orchids, and an attendant who handed you linen towels. But as I pushed the door open, I realized I was not alone. Standing at the mirror, applying a layer of blood-red lipstick, was a woman who looked like a future version of Serena. Her hair was an icy blonde helmet. Her suit was tailored to within an inch of its life, and her eyes were cold. Hard diamonds. Eleanor Blackwood, the media mogul, the woman who controlled the city's narrative. Serena's mother. She saw me in the mirror. Her eyes flicked over my dress, my hair, my shoes. The disdain was palpable. It was a physical force. "Excuse me," she said, her voice like grinding glass. "You are blocking the light. Staff restrooms are in the basement." She thought I was the cleaning lady. I stopped. I took a breath, and for a second, I let the mask drop. I let the Zara, who was Arthur Sterling's heir, step forward. "I am not staff, Mrs. Blackwood," I said, my voice steady and cool. "I am the woman whose husband your daughter is currently groping at table 4. Eleanor froze. She capped her lipstick slowly, turning to face me. "Oh," she said, a cruel smile touching her lips. "You are the Vance wife, the little placeholder." She stepped closer, invading my personal space. She smelled of gin and malice. "Let me give you a piece of advice, darling," she hissed. "Men like Derek are climbers. They need footholds. You are a loose rock. My daughter is the summit. Do not blame her for being better than you. It is just natural selection. Now, run along. Go change a diaper or whatever it is you people do." She turned back to the mirror, dismissing me as if I were a gnat. I looked at her stiff back. I thought about the empire she had built on lies and slander. I thought about the text message I had just received from Arthur's legal team confirming that they had acquired 40% of her company's outstanding debt. "Mrs. Blackwood," I said softly. She sighed, annoyed. "What?" "Enjoy the view," I said, gesturing to her reflection. "And enjoy the wealth, while you still can." She frowned, looking at me via the mirror. "Excuse me. The tide is going out. Eleanor," I said, using her first name with a deliberate lack of respect. "And when it does, everyone sees who has been swimming naked." I turned and walked out before she could respond, leaving her staring at her own confused reflection. When I returned to the table, the atmosphere had shifted. The champagne bottle was empty. Derek and Serena were leaning close together, their foreheads almost touching. They were drunk on alcohol and their own perceived brilliance. Serena's bag. The Hermes Birkin was sitting on the floor by her feet, the flap carelessly open. I sat down. Derek didn't look up. "I was just telling Serena," he slurred, "that once the West Harbor money hits, I am buying a penthouse. No more suburbs. I want to be in the sky." "The sky suits you," Serena cooed. "Oh, look," I said, pointing toward the entrance. "Is that the mayor?" It was a clumsy distraction, but they were drunk. They both turned their heads to look. In that split second, I moved. I took my phone, the one I had set to record, and slid it silently into the open mouth of Serena's bag. It vanished into the dark leather interior. "I don't see him," Derek grumbled, turning back. "My mistake," I said. "I must have seen wrong." 10 minutes later, the moment I was waiting for arrived. "I need to powder my nose," Serena announced. Standing up, she swayed slightly. She looked at Derek. "Walk me?" It was a blatant invitation. "Of course," Derek said, scrambling up. "Gentlemen, Zara, excuse us for a moment." He offered his arm to Serena. She took it, but she left her bag. No, she couldn't leave the bag. "Serena," I called out, my voice helpful and sweet. "You forgot your purse. You don't want to leave it here. It is so crowded." Serena looked back. "Oh, right, thanks." She grabbed the bag with my phone in it. They walked away. Not toward the restrooms, but toward the side corridor that led to the private smoking lounge and the emergency exit. I sat there, cutting my dry chicken breast, my heart pounding a rhythm against my ribs. I couldn't hear them. I wasn't wearing the earbud. I had to trust the device. I had to trust that their arrogance would make them careless. 15 minutes passed. The men at the table were ignoring me. Discussing golf handicaps? Finally, they returned. Derek looked disheveled. His tie was crooked. Serena's lipstick was smeared. They looked like two teenagers who had been caught making out under the bleachers, except they were adults destroying a family. They sat down. Serena placed the bag on the table this time. "Everything all right?" I asked. "Fine," Derek said quickly. "Just networking." I needed the phone back. "Oh, goodness," I exclaimed, knocking over my glass of water. The water spilled across the table, cascading toward Serena. "Watch it," she shrieked, grabbing her bag and jumping up. "I am so sorry," I cried, grabbing napkins and rushing around the table to help. "I am so clumsy. Let me help you." I created chaos. I dabbed at the table. I apologized. I bumped into her, and in the confusion of napkins and swearing, I reached into her bag. My fingers brushed her wallet. Her compact. and then the cold glass of my phone. I pulled it out and slid it into my sleeve in one fluid motion. "I am so sorry," I repeated, stepping back. "I think I should go. The baby is probably hungry, and I am just ruining everyone's night." "Yes," Derek said, wiping water off his sleeve. "You are. Go home, Zara. Just go home." "Are you coming?" I asked, looking at him with wide, pleading eyes. "No," he said. "I have to settle the bill and apologize to my guests for your incompetence. Take a taxi." "Okay," I whispered. "Goodbye, Derek. Goodbye, Serena." I walked out of the dining room. I didn't look back. I walked through the lobby, past the host stand, and out into the cool night air. But I didn't leave. I stood in the shadows of the valet stand, looking through the large glass windows of the restaurant front. I took my phone out. I stopped the recording. I hit play. I scrubbed to the middle. Through the phone speaker, muffled but audible, came the sound of a heavy door closing, then silence, then Serena's voice. "God, you are tense. Relax. Derek." "I can't relax," came Derek's voice. "Did you transfer the funds?" "Yes, I moved the money from my dad's holding company," Serena said. "But listen to me. We have to be smart. Once you get the West Harbor bid, we skim 20% off the top immediately. We call it consulting fees and route it to the Cayman account." 20%. Derek sounded nervous. "That is a lot. If the auditors see that—" "Screw the auditors," Serena hissed. "And screw the company. If the project fails, we let Vance Construction take the fall. We let your wife take the fall since her name is on the new loans. We walk away with the cash and start over in Europe. You said you wanted to be free, right?" "Yeah," Derek said. "I want to be free of her. I want to be free of all of this." "Then kiss me," Serena commanded. I stopped the recording. I had them. Conspiracy to commit fraud, embezzlement, it was all there. I looked through the window. Inside, the waiter had arrived at the table with the black leather folder containing the bill. The bill for 5 people. 4 bottles of vintage champagne, lobster, caviar, wagyu. It had to be at least $4,000. I watched Derek laugh, waving his hand magnanimously. He pulled out his platinum business credit card, the card linked to the company account. The account I knew was frozen because Arthur's team had flagged the suspicious transfer to the West Harbor Shell Company an hour ago. Derek placed the card in the folder. The waiter took it and walked away. I waited. 2 minutes later, the waiter returned. He did not look happy. He leaned down and whispered something to Derek. Derek's smile vanished. He shook his head, looking confused. He reached into his wallet and pulled out another card. His personal card, the one linked to the joint account I had emptied. The waiter took it. He walked to the terminal at the side station. I could see the red light flash from here. He came back. He shook his head. Derek stood up. He was gesturing wildly. His face was turning from red to a pale, sickly white. The other men at the table stopped talking. People at nearby tables were starting to look. The waiter said something loud enough that I couldn't hear it. But I saw the result. He crossed his arms. He wasn't leaving until he got paid. Derek turned to the men. They all suddenly found their shoes very interesting. None of them offered to pay. They were leeches, after all. Slowly, painfully. Derek turned to Serena. I saw her face. The disgust was instant. The golden boy was broke. The king of the city couldn't pay for dinner. She argued. I saw her mouth moving fast. She was furious, but the waiter was threatening to call the police, with a motion of pure rage. Serena ripped her purse open. She slammed her own black credit card onto the table. Derek tried to touch her shoulder. She slapped his hand away. I smiled. The crack in the armor had appeared. Humiliation is a powerful acid. It eats away at love, at lust, and especially at the fragile ego of a narcissist. I turned around and signaled for the valet. "Taxi," I said. "Take me to the Sterling Tower. I have a meeting with my father." The morning sun sliced through the blinds of the apartment like a razor. illuminating the wreckage of what used to be a home. The air was stale, smelling of the whiskey Derek had consumed after we returned from the disastrous dinner at Le Jardin. He had spent the night pacing the living room, muttering to himself, making frantic phone calls to lenders who had stopped answering him weeks ago. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding hope. She was awake, her wide, innocent eyes tracking the dust motes dancing in the light. She had no idea that her father was currently in the kitchen, hyperventilating over a laptop screen. Yes, yes! Derek's scream tore through the thin walls. It was a sound of manic, terrifying joy. He kicked the bedroom door open. He was still wearing his suit trousers from the night before, stained and wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot, wild with adrenaline and lack of sleep. "We are in, Zara," he shouted, waving the laptop at me. "We are in." I shielded Hope's head instinctively. "What, Derek?" "The West Harbor Project." He laughed. A jagged, hysterical sound. "The email just came through. Port Royal Development Group accepted the bid. We made the shortlist. Do you know what this means? It means we are going to be rich. Filthy. Stinking rich." He threw the laptop onto the duvet. The screen displayed a very official-looking email, one that I knew Arthur's team had sent exactly 3 minutes ago. It congratulated Vance Construction on passing the preliminary vetting and requested a final proof of liquidity to finalize the contract. "That is great, Derek," I said, keeping my voice flat. "So everything is fine now." "Fine, it is perfect." He paced the small room, running his hands through his greasy hair. "Except for one small thing, one tiny little detail." He stopped and looked at me. The manic joy evaporated, replaced by a cold, desperate hunger. "They need to see a cash reserve," he said. "To prove we can handle the initial overhead, I need $50,000. Zara, by noon, today." "But you wired $500,000 yesterday," I said. "And the accounts are empty. You said so yourself." "That was the buy-in," he snapped. "This is the reserve. It is just for show. I just need to put it in the account for 24 hours until the auditors sign off. Then I can take it out." He took a step closer to me. "Where is it?" he demanded. "Where is what?" "The jewelry," he hissed. "Your mother's jewelry box, the vintage sapphire set, the diamond brooch, the pearls. I had them appraised 2 years ago for insurance. They are worth $60,000 easily." My blood ran cold. The jewelry box was the only tangible thing I had left of my mother. It wasn't just metal and stone. It was her memory. It was the necklace she wore when she held me as a baby. It was the ring she twisted when she was nervous. "No," I said. The word was quiet but hard as iron. Derek blinked, as if he hadn't heard me correctly. "Excuse me?" "No," I repeated, looking him in the eye. "You are not selling my mother's jewelry. You took the savings. You mortgaged the house. You are not taking that." "I am not asking you." "Zara," he roared. "I am telling you, this is for us, for this family. Are you so selfish that you would let a few trinkets stand in the way of millions?" "It is not for the family," I said, standing up and placing Hope in her cradle. "It is for you. It is for your ego. And I will not let you pawn my mother's legacy to fix your mistakes." Derek stared at me. For a moment, there was silence. Then, something inside him broke. The pressure of the debts, the humiliation at the restaurant, the fear of Serena leaving him, it all coalesced into a violent, blinding rage. "My mistakes!" he screamed. He grabbed the lamp from the bedside table and hurled it against the wall. It shattered, ceramic shards raining down on the carpet. "You are my mistake, Zara. You are the biggest mistake of my life." He began to tear the room apart. He ripped the drawers out of the dresser. Dumping clothes onto the floor, he swept my perfumes and lotions off the vanity with a crash. He kicked the closet door so hard the wood splintered. "Where is it?" he bellowed, tossing the mattress off the box spring. "Where did you hide it, you witch?" "Stop it," I screamed, stepping in front of the cradle. "You are scaring the baby." "I don't care about the baby," he yelled. spinning around to face me. "I need that money." He lunged at me, grabbing my shoulders and shaking me. His fingers dug into my flesh, bruising the skin. "Tell me where it is, or so help me God. I will burn this whole apartment down with you inside it." "It is in the vent," I lied, pointing to the ceiling vent. Just to get his hands off me, I hid it in the air vent. He shoved me backward. I stumbled, my foot catching on a pile of clothes. I fell hard, my shoulders slamming into the wall. Derek didn't even look at me. He dragged a chair over to the vent, clawing at the grate until his fingernails bled. He ripped it open. Empty. He turned around, his face purple with fury. He realized I had lied. "You think this is funny," he whispered. He marched toward me, in his blind path of destruction. He didn't see the cradle. His heavy boot caught the leg of the wooden stand. The cradle tipped. Time seemed to slow down. I saw the basket tilt. I saw the blanket slide. "Hope!" I screamed. I threw myself forward. Sliding across the floor, I caught the edge of the basket just inches before it hit the ground. The momentum slammed my wrist against the floorboards, a sharp crack of pain shooting up my arm, but I held on. Hope rolled to the side, wailing in terror, but she did not fall. She was safe. I lay there on the floor, panting, clutching the cradle with my good hand. I looked up at Derek. He was standing over me. He wasn't horrified. He wasn't checking to see if his daughter was okay. He was just breathing hard, annoyed that I was in his way, and in that moment, the last tiny, lingering thread of my marriage dissolved. "You almost killed her," I said. My voice was no longer human. It was something dead. "Oh, stop being dramatic," Derek spat. "It barely moved. If you had just given me the jewelry, none of this would have happened. This is your fault." He walked over to his discarded suit jacket and pulled out a thick, folded envelope. He threw it at me. The papers fluttered down, landing on my chest. "I was going to wait until after the deal closed," he said, his voice dripping with venom. "I was going to be nice. I was going to give you a severance package. But you know what? You don't deserve it." I looked at the bold text at the top of the document. "Petition for dissolution of marriage." "Sign it," he commanded. "You want a divorce?" I asked, sitting up slowly, checking Hope one more time. "Want it?" "I have wanted it for 5 years," Derek laughed cruelly. "Do you want to know the truth, Zara? Do you want to know why I married you?" He crouched down so his face was level with mine. "I heard a rumor," he whispered. "Back when we were dating, someone told me your grandmother was related to the Sterlings. They said you were a secret heiress. They said when you turned 25, you would inherit millions." He sneered, shaking his head. "Imagine my disappointment when your 25th birthday came and went, and all you got was a card and a cake. You were nothing. Just a broke, orphan girl with delusions of grandeur. I have been stuck with you, waiting for a payoff that never came. You are a bad investment. Zara, you are a liability, and I am liquidating you." He stood up and checked his watch. "You have 24 hours, he said. "I want you out. Take the brat and go to a shelter. I don't care, but this apartment is mine. The lease is in my name, and everything in it is mine." He kicked the pen that had fallen on the floor toward me. "Sign the papers. Relinquish all claims to my assets, my future earnings, and the company. Do it now, or I swear I will find that jewelry box and sell it for scrap metal." I picked up the document. I read the clauses. He was trying to leave me with nothing. No alimony, no child support, no home. I looked at the pen. It was a cheap Bic pen this time, permanent ink. "Derek," I said, my voice calm, contrasting sharply with the chaotic room. "Are you sure you want to do this? Once I sign this, there is no going back. You are severing the only lifeline you have." He laughed so hard he choked. "Lifeline. You are an anchor. Zara, you are dragging me down. I am about to become the king of Port Royal. I have Serena Blackwood. I have the West Harbor Project. I have power you can't even comprehend. I don't need a lifeline. I need to cut the dead weight." He pointed at the paper. Sign. It. I uncapped the pen. I didn't hesitate. I signed my name, Zara Hartwood. I wasn't signing away my rights. I was signing his death warrant. By divorcing me now, before the fraud was exposed, he was ensuring that he alone would bear the full weight of the criminal charges. He was stripping himself of spousal privilege. He was isolating himself on an island that was about to sink. I handed him the papers. Done, I said. He snatched them, checking the signature with a greedy grin. Finally, he breathed. I am free. He stuffed the papers into his briefcase. I have a meeting with the investors, he said, fixing his tie in the broken mirror. I expect you to be gone by the time I get back tomorrow morning. Leave the keys on the counter. He walked to the door. Oh, and Derek, I called out. He paused, hand on the doorknob. What? I stood up, holding hope against my chest. I didn't look like a battered wife anymore. I stood tall, my spine straight, my chin lifted. I will see you at the gala tomorrow night, I said. The West Harbor launch party? He scoffed. You at the gala. It is a black tie event. Zara. $5,000 a plate. They don't let stray dogs in. I will be there, I said. I have to pick up my personal items. Whatever. He rolled his eyes. Just stay out of my way. If you embarrass me in front of Serena, I will have security throw you out. I wouldn't miss it for the world, I replied. He slammed the door. The vibration rattled the last remaining picture frame on the wall, our wedding photo, and it fell, the glass cracking down the middle, separating his face from mine. I stood in the silence for exactly 10 seconds. Then, the front door opened again, but it wasn't Derek. 4 men in black suits entered. They moved with the silent precision of shadows. They were Arthur's personal guard. One of them, a giant of a man named Elias, stepped forward. He looked at the overturned furniture, the shattered lamp, and the bruise forming on my arm. His jaw tightened. Mr. Sterling is downstairs in the limousine. Ma'am, Elias said, his voice low and respectful. He saw Mr. Vance leave. He asks if we have permission to intervene. No, I said, walking toward the bedroom to pack the only bag I would need. Not yet. He needs to fly high before he crashes. I looked around the apartment one last time. It was a tomb of my past life, a monument to my own naivety. Elias, I said. Yes, ma'am. Burn the furniture, I said. Burn the clothes. Burn everything he touched. I don't want a single trace of this life left. And the jewelry box. Ma'am? Elias asked, holding up the wooden box he had retrieved from the hidden compartment under the floorboards where I had actually kept it. Take it, I said. It belongs to the heir of the Sterling Empire, not the wife of a bankrupt fisherman. I walked out of the apartment. Stepping over the threshold, I didn't look back at the ruin. I walked down the stairs, out into the bright, blinding sunlight, and stepped into the back of the waiting Rolls-Royce. Arthur was waiting. He didn't say a word. He just handed me a glass of iced water and a cold compress for my wrist. Is it done? He asked after a moment. He signed the papers, I said, watching the city pass by through the tinted windows. He thinks he is a king. Arthur took a sip of his scotch. Tomorrow night, we will show him what a real monarch looks like. The car sped toward the Sterling estate on the hill. The game was over. The execution was about to begin. The Sterling estate was not a home. It was a fortress wrapped in velvet and marble, sitting high upon the cliffs of Port Royal, like a watching god. When I woke up, the cheap, lumpy mattress of the apartment on Elm Street was a distant, nightmare memory. I lay in a bed, large enough to sleep a family of 4. Beneath sheets made of silk so fine it felt like water against my skin. The air smelled of fresh eucalyptus and sea salt. Pumped in through a filtration system that cost more than Derek's annual salary, but there was no time to luxuriate. Today was not a day for rest. It was a day for war. At 7 o'clock in the morning, the double doors to my suite opened. A team of 12 people marched in. They did not look like maids. They looked like a tactical unit, but instead of guns, they carried garment bags, steamer trunks, and makeup cases that unfolded like transformers. "Good morning, Ms. Hartwood," said a woman with severe black glasses and a clipboard. "I am Alara. Mr. Sterling has ordered the full protocol. We have 4 hours to erase the last 5 years of your life." I sat up, clutching the silk duvet. 4 hours. "We will need every minute," Alara said. Snapping her fingers, the team descended on me. First came the exfoliation. I was scrubbed with salts, imported from the Dead Sea, polishing away the rough skin of a woman who had spent years cleaning floors on her hands and knees. Then came the massage, deep and bruising, working out the knots of tension that Derek had planted in my shoulders. My hair, dull and lifeless from cheap shampoo, was treated with oils that smelled of rare orchids. They cut it, dyed it, and styled it. Gone was the messy mom bun. In its place was a sleek, dark curtain of silk that framed my face like a helmet of obsidian. Then came the wardrobe. Alara rolled out a rack of dresses that looked less like clothing and more like art. They were haute couture pieces, fresh from the runways of Paris and Milan. "Mr. Sterling said to choose something that speaks," Alara said. I ran my hand over a soft pink chiffon. It was beautiful. It was delicate. "No," I said, pushing it aside. "That is a victim's dress. That is a dress for a woman who wants to be saved." I moved past the golds and the silvers. I stopped at the end of the rack. There, hanging heavy and ominous, was a gown of midnight black velvet and silk. It was structured, with sharp, architectural shoulders and a plunging neckline that demanded confidence. Embedded into the fabric were thousands of tiny, black crystals that didn't sparkle so much as devour the light. "That one," I said. Alara smiled, a sharp, approving expression. "The Black Widow. An excellent choice." While I was being painted and polished, the business of destruction was happening in the library downstairs, at noon, wrapped in a white cashmere robe. I walked down the grand staircase. Arthur was sitting behind a desk that had once belonged to a 19th century king. He was flanked by 3 men in gray suits. "Gentlemen," Arthur said, not standing up. "This is the chairwoman." The lawyers stood up immediately, bowing their heads. "Chairwoman," I asked. Walking over to the desk, Arthur slid a thick document toward me. It was bound in leather. "For the next 24 hours, Arthur said, his voice grave. "You are not just Zara Hartwood. You are the acting CEO of the Sterling Corporation. I have signed over temporary power of attorney. Tonight at the gala, you do not speak for me. You speak as me." I touched the leather binder. The weight of it was immense. This wasn't just a title, it was a weapon. "And the acquisition?" I asked. One of the gray suits stepped forward. "Finalized at 9 o'clock this morning, Ms. Hartwood. We purchased the distressed debt of Vance Construction from 3 different predatory lenders. We effectively own his company's liabilities. If you call in the debt, he is bankrupt within seconds." "And the Blackwoods?" I asked, my eyes narrowing. "That was trickier," the lawyer admitted. "But Serena Blackwood has been leveraging her shares in her father's media conglomerate to fund her lifestyle. She signed a high-risk collateral agreement to cover the cash transfer she made to the West Harbor project yesterday. We bought that agreement." I smiled. It was a cold sensation. "So," I said, "if the West Harbor project is revealed to be a sham, and the money is lost, then Serena defaults," the lawyer finished, "and Sterling Corp seizes her shares. We will own 14% of Blackwood Media, enough to force a vote of no confidence against her father." "Good," I said. "Very good." Arthur motioned for the lawyers to leave. When we were alone, he turned a laptop screen toward me. "Before you go tonight," Arthur said softly, "I need you to see this. I need you to be sure." He pressed play. The video was grainy, black and white footage from the security camera in the hallway of my old apartment building. The timestamp was 2 nights ago. I watched myself on the screen, crawling on the floor, clutching my stomach, I watched Derek step over me. I saw him check his watch. I saw the annoyance on his face. I saw him walk to the elevator, adjust his sunglasses, and leave me there to die. I watched it. I forced myself to watch every second. I watched the moment I passed out from the pain before the helicopter arrived. I felt the tears prick my eyes, but they did not fall. The makeup artist had used waterproof mascara, but I didn't need it. The heat of my anger evaporated the tears before they could form. Arthur paused the video. "He left you," Arthur said. The anger in his voice caused the crystal decanter on his desk to rattle. "He left my goddaughter on a dirty floor. Now, I ask you this. Zara, you have the power. You have the money. You have the law." He looked me in the eye. "Do you want mercy? Do you want to just take the house back and let him fade away? Or do you want to burn him to the ground?" I looked at the frozen image of Derek's back on the screen. "Mercy is for people who make mistakes," I said, my voice steady and low. Derek did not make a mistake. He made a choice. He chose money over his wife. He chose a mistress over his child. I stood up, tightening the belt of my robe. "I don't want an apology. Arthur, I want justice. And this time, justice is named destruction." Arthur nodded slowly. "Then go and get dressed, chairwoman. Your carriage awaits." Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, the atmosphere was very different. In the penthouse suite of the Grand Hotel, Derek Vance was standing in front of a full-length mirror, struggling with his bow tie. He was sweating. "Do I look like a billionaire?" he asked, turning to face the room. Serena was lounging on the sofa, sipping champagne. She was wearing a dress made of gold sequins that hugged her body like liquid metal. It was flashy, expensive, and loud. "You look like a man who is about to own this town," Serena purred. "Stop fidgeting. You are making me nervous." "I can't help it," Derek said, wiping his palms on his trousers. "This mystery chairman, the rumors are crazy. Everyone is saying it is some foreign investor, or maybe Elon Musk. Imagine if I get to shake his hand tonight." "You will do more than shake his hand," Serena said, standing up and walking over to him. She adjusted his collar. "You are going to be his partner. We put $500,000 into this deal. Derek, that buys us a seat at the big table." Her phone rang on the coffee table. The screen flashed Daddy. Serena rolled her eyes. "Ugh, he has called 6 times. "Maybe you should answer it," Derek said nervously. "If he found out about the transfer—" "Relax," Serena scoffed. She picked up the phone and swiped to answer, putting it on speaker. "Serena," her father's voice boomed, sounding tinny and distorted. "Where are you?" "I am getting ready for the gala, Daddy," she said, examining her nails. "You know, the event where your daughter becomes a mogul." "Listen to me, Mr. Blackwood shouted. "I had my forensic accountant look at the wire transfer you authorized yesterday. The destination account is a ghost. Serena, the routing number bounces through 3 different shell companies in the Cayman Islands, but the endpoint disappears. It is an offshore investment vehicle." "Daddy," Serena sighed, "it is how rich people avoid taxes. You should know that." "No, mister," Blackwood yelled. "It smells like a trap. I made calls." No one has ever met the board of directors of Port Royal Development. The names are anagrams. Serena. "I tried to freeze the funds, but it was too late. You need to pull out. Do not sign anything tonight." "You are just jealous," Serena snapped. "You are jealous because I found a deal you missed. Derek and I are going to be bigger than you. Deal with it." "Serena, you are being a fool." She hung up. She tossed the phone back onto the sofa. "Old men," she said to Derek, shaking her head. "They are so risk-averse. They don't understand that you have to spend money to make money." Derek looked at the phone, then at Serena. The greed in his eyes overpowered the fear. "He is wrong," Derek said. "We are winners." "Exactly." Serena kissed him on the cheek. "Now let's go. The limo is downstairs. Let's go collect our crown." Back at the Sterling estate, the sun had set, The sky was a bruised purple, fading into black. I walked out of the front doors. The night air was cool, but I did not feel it. The black velvet dress was heavy, armored, protecting me from the elements and the world. Around my neck, Arthur had placed a diamond choker, a single, massive stone that rested in the hollow of my throat like a trapped star. At the bottom of the stairs, a car was waiting. It was not a Rolls-Royce this time. It was a custom-built Maybach Pullman, armored to withstand a rocket-propelled grenade. Painted a black so deep it looked like a hole in the universe. Arthur stood by the open door. He was wearing a tuxedo, looking every inch the Godfather of Port Royal. "The rumors are already circulating," Arthur said, checking his phone. "The press is going wild. They know the new owner of the West Harbor project will be revealed tonight. They are expecting a man." "They are going to be disappointed," I said. "They are going to be terrified," Arthur corrected. He held out his hand to help me in. I paused for a second. I looked down at my hands. They were manicured, adorned with a ring that cost more than Derek's entire life insurance policy. These were not the hands of the woman who had scrubbed toilets. These were not the hands of the woman who had begged her husband to stay while she was in labor. These were the hands of the executioner. "Are you ready, Zara?" Arthur asked. I looked up at the moon. Somewhere out there, Derek was laughing. Somewhere out there, Serena was preening. They were driving toward the Grand Hotel. Thinking they were the hunters, they had no idea they were the prey. "No," I said, stepping into the dark, leather-scented interior of the car. "Zara is gone. She died in that apartment." I settled into the seat, the velvet of my dress pooling around me like ink. "Then who are you?" Arthur asked, closing the door. The window rolled down. I looked at him, and my smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "I am the storm," I said. The engine purred to life, a low, menacing growl. The car pulled away, gliding down the winding driveway toward the city lights that twinkled below like fallen stars. In my lap, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from the bank. Transfer complete. Hope Hartwood Trust Fund fully funded. I swiped the notification away. That was the defense. Now, it was time for the offense. I opened the dossier on the seat next to me. The first page was a photo of Derek. The second was a photo of Serena. I took the fountain pen, the one with the permanent ink this time, and drew a single, thick line through both of their faces. "Driver," I said into the intercom. "Yes, ma'am." "Don't stop at the red carpet," I ordered. "Take us to the private rear entrance. The Queen does not enter through the front door." "Understood, ma'am." The car accelerated, merging onto the highway. The city of Port Royal lay ahead, a glittering arena waiting for the slaughter. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. It was time to feed the lions. The grand ballroom of the Grand Hotel was a cavern of gold leaf and crystal, a place where the air itself seemed to be composed of oxygen and crushed banknotes. It was the only 6-star hotel in Port Royal, a venue where a single glass of water cost $20, and the walls were lined with original oil paintings that could feed a small country for a year. Tonight, it was the hunting ground for the city's apex predators. I stood behind the massive double mahogany doors of the rear entrance, watching the feed on a small monitor held by one of Arthur's technicians. My heart was not racing. My hands were not shaking. I felt a strange, cold stillness, like the center of a glacier, inside the ballroom. The elite of Port Royal were mingling. It was a sea of black tuxedos and jewel-toned gowns. They swirled around the champagne fountains, their laughter tinkling like broken glass. And there, right in the center of the room, standing under the largest chandelier, was the jester of the evening, Derek Vance. He looked the part of the successful tycoon he so desperately wanted to be. His tuxedo was tailored, his hair was gelled to perfection, and his smile was wide and blinding. But I knew him. I knew the way his left eye twitched when he was lying. I knew the way he kept patting his breast pocket, checking for the assurance of a wallet that I knew was full of maxed-out credit cards. He was holding court, with Serena Blackwood draped over his arm like a trophy pelt. Serena was radiant in her gold sequined dress, a shimmering column of vanity. She threw her head back, laughing at a joke made by the deputy mayor. She looked like a queen. She had no idea she was about to be dethroned. I watched on the screen as a short, balding man approached them. It was Marcus Vane, a notorious hard money lender who charged 60% interest and broke kneecaps as a hobby. I signaled the technician to turn up the volume on the directional microphone we had planted in the floral arrangement on the center table. "Mr. Vance?" Vane's voice was like gravel. "We need to talk about the outstanding balance. The grace period expired at noon." Derek's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but he recovered instantly. He clapped a hand on Vane's shoulder, a gesture so familiar it made me cringe. "Marcus, my good friend," Derek boomed, loud enough for the nearby circle to hear. "Relax. Tonight is the night everything changes. I just secured the lead position on the West Harbor project. The contract is as good as signed." "I have heard stories before, Vance," Vane muttered, unimpressed. "This is not a story," Derek insisted, leaning in close, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that the microphone caught perfectly. "Listen to me. Once the announcement is made tonight, my company valuation is going to triple. I will not just pay you back, Marcus. I will pay you double, 100% return on your investment, just for being patient for another 2 hours." Vane narrowed his eyes. Greed warred with skepticism on his face. Finally, greed won. "Double," Vane grunted. "You have until midnight. After that, I take your thumbs." "You have my word," Derek said, exhaling a breath he had been holding. He turned back to the crowd, pulling Serena closer. "Everyone, I want you to meet someone special. This is Serena Blackwood, my partner in business, and soon, my wife." A ripple of applause went through the sycophants surrounding them. Serena beamed, flashing her ring finger, which was currently bare, but she clearly expected that to change soon. "Wife?" a woman asked. "But Derek, I thought you were married to her. What was her name? The quiet girl?" "Zara." Derek laughed, waving his hand dismissively. "Oh, that is ancient history. We are finalizing the paperwork now. Poor girl. She just could not keep up with this life. She is happier living simply. Serena, on the other hand, she was born for this." "To the future, Mrs. Vance," someone toasted. I watched them clink glasses. I watched them drink to my erasure. Arthur Sterling appeared beside me in the shadows. He adjusted his cufflinks. "It is time," he said. He signaled to the stage manager. Inside the ballroom, the light suddenly dimmed. The murmuring of the crowd died down, replaced by a hushed anticipation. A spotlight cut through the darkness, illuminating the empty stage. The master of ceremonies walked out. He was a man with a voice like velvet. "Ladies and gentlemen," he intoned, "distinguished guests, the moment you have all been waiting for, the Port Royal Development Group is proud to announce the official launch of the West Harbor Revitalization Project. And now, to unveil the vision for the future of our city, please welcome the representative of the primary investor, the chairwoman of the Sterling Corporation." A gasp went through the room. "Sterling," I heard Derek whisper on the monitor. "I thought Arthur Sterling was retired. I thought he was a recluse." "Who cares?" Serena hissed back. "It is Sterling money. That means it is real. Fix your tie." The MC continued. "Please welcome Ms. Zara Hartwood Sterling." The silence that followed was absolute. It was a vacuum. For 3 seconds, nobody breathed. The name hung in the air, impossible and heavy. Then, the great double doors in front of me began to open. I did not rush. I stepped forward, my heels striking the marble floor with a rhythmic, echoing click. I walked out of the shadows and into the blinding white light of the chandeliers. The dress Alara had chosen was a masterpiece of intimidation. The black velvet swallowed the light, making my silhouette sharp and undeniable against the gold of the room. The thousands of black crystals embedded in the fabric shimmered like a night sky as I moved. On my head, nestled in the dark, sleek helmet of my hair, was a small tiara. It was not a princess's tiara. It was made of blackened steel and diamonds. Sharp and jagged, it was a crown of thorns made of ice. I walked slowly. I kept my chin high. My eyes swept the room, cold and unblinking. I saw the shock ripple through the crowd like a physical wave. I saw jaws drop. I saw wine glasses pause halfway to lips. And then, I saw them. Derek and Serena were standing near the front, right by the stage. Derek was blinking rapidly, as if he were trying to clear a hallucination. He rubbed his eyes. He leaned forward, squinting. "Serena," he whispered, his voice trembling so much it was audible even without the microphone. That looks like—" "Don't be stupid," Serena snapped, though she was staring at me with a frown of confusion. "That can't be her. Zara is a frumpy little housewife. She is probably at home crying over a diaper." "But the name," Derek stammered. "He said Zara Hartwood." "It is a common name." Serena dismissed him, though her voice lacked conviction. "Look at that woman. Look at that dress. That dress costs more than your house. Derek, that is not your wife." I drew closer. I was only 10 feet away from them now. I looked directly at Derek. I did not smile. I did not frown. I looked at him as if he were a specimen in a jar. Recognition finally slammed into him. It wasn't the face, or the hair, or the clothes. It was the eyes. He knew my eyes. "My God," he choked out. "Zara." The whisper carried in the silent room. Serena turned to him, furious. "Stop it! You are making a scene." She looked at me. She saw the way the crowd was parting for me. She saw the way the light caught the diamonds at my throat, and jealousy, hot and irrational, consumed her. She could not accept that the woman she had mocked yesterday was now walking through the room like a deity. "Hey!" Serena shouted. The crowd gasped. "You do not shout at a black tie gala." Serena stepped out of the line, blocking my path to the stage. She held a glass of red wine in her hand. Her face was twisted in a sneer. "I don't know who you slept with to get that dress," Serena announced, her voice shrill. "But the help should use the service entrance. You are confusing the guests." She decided to play the power card. She wanted to humiliate me. She wanted to stain the perfection of the black velvet with red wine and prove that I was just a dirty thing beneath her. She raised her arm, pulling the glass back to throw the liquid in my face. "Go back to the kitchen," she spat. She swung her arm forward, but the wine never left the glass. Before her arm could complete the arc, a shadow moved from behind me. It was Elias. He moved with a speed that defied his size. His hand, large and gloved in black leather, shot out and clamped around Serena's wrist. He didn't just stop her. He applied pressure. There was a sickening crack, not a bone breaking, but the sound of tendons being stretched to their absolute limit. "Ah!" Serena screamed. Dropping the glass, it shattered on the marble floor, splashing red wine onto the hem of her gold dress. Elias twisted her arm behind her back in a professional takedown hold, forcing her to bend forward. He didn't slam her to the ground. He just immobilized her, forcing her into a bow of submission in front of me. "You do not approach the chairwoman," Elias said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the room. "And you certainly do not threaten her." Derek stood there, frozen. He looked at Elias, then at Serena, whimpering in pain, then at me. "Zara," he squeaked, "what is going on? Tell him to let her go." I stopped. I looked down at Serena, who was gasping for air, her face red with pain and humiliation. Then I looked at Derek. I did not speak to them. I did not acknowledge their questions. To answer them would be to treat them as equals. I simply stepped around the puddle of wine and the woman kneeling in it. I gathered the velvet of my skirt in one hand and ascended the stairs to the stage. I walked to the podium. I adjusted the microphone. The room was so quiet, I could hear the hum of the air conditioning. 300 of the richest people in the city were staring at me, waiting. I leaned into the mic. My voice rang out, clear, amplified, and dripping with authority. "Welcome," I said. "To my party." I let the words hang there. "My name is Zara Hartwood Sterling, and tonight we are going to talk about the future. But first, we need to clean up the past." I pointed a gloved finger at the projection screen behind me. "Mr. Vance?" I said, addressing Derek directly for the first time. "You asked for an investment. You asked for a chance to prove your worth. Well, here is your audit." I snapped my fingers. The massive screen behind me flickered to life. It wasn't a PowerPoint presentation about architecture. It wasn't a rendering of a harbor. It was a bank statement. It was a magnified image of the Vance Construction operating account. The balance was highlighted in neon red -$300,000. "Hey," Derek shouted, finding his voice. "You can't show that. That is private." "Is it?" I asked calmly. "As the owner of your debt, Mr. Vance, I have the right to inspect my assets. And frankly, I am unimpressed." I signaled again. The screen changed. Now it showed the wire transfer from yesterday, $500,000, sent to Port Royal Development Group. "You borrowed money you did not have," I narrated, my voice cool and clinical. "You stole equity from your wife's inheritance. You deceived lenders. And you sent it all to a company that does not exist." Derek's face went white. "What?" "Port Royal Development Group is a holding shell," I explained, leaning on the podium. "Wholly owned by Sterling Corp. You didn't invest in a harbor. Derek, you donated $500,000 to the Zara Hartwood Foundation for Abandoned Mothers." A ripple of laughter started at the back of the room. It spread quickly, turning into a wave of mockery. "You tricked me!" Derek screamed, his hands balling into fists. "This is fraud." "No," I corrected him. "Fraud is claiming to be a billionaire when you can't pay for dinner. Fraud is forging your wife's signature on loan documents which, by the way, I have originals of, signed with disappearing ink, making them invalid." I looked at Serena, who had been released by Elias and was now clutching her wrist, staring at the screen in horror. "And you, Ms. Blackwood?" I said. "You leveraged your family shares to fund this little venture, shares that were collateralized against a default." The screen changed again. It showed a legal document, notice of default and seizure of assets. "Since the Port Royal Development Group is officially rejecting the bid from Vance Construction due to insolvency," I announced, "the collateral is forfeit. As of 5 minutes ago, Sterling Corp is the majority shareholder of your personal stock portfolio." Serena screamed. It was a raw, ugly sound. "My father will kill you." "Your father is on the phone with my lawyers right now," I said. "He is actually quite relieved. He prefers a hostile takeover to a daughter who embezzles from him." I looked out at the crowd. "This is the reality of Port Royal," I said. "We have tolerated wolves in sheep's clothing for too long. Tonight, we take out the trash." I looked down at Derek. He was shaking. He looked small. He looked like exactly what he was, a man who had gone fishing and caught a leviathan that was going to eat him whole. "Security," I said softly, "please remove these trespassers. They are ruining the ambiance." "You can't do this," Derek yelled as 2 guards grabbed his arms. "I am Derek Vance. I am a king." "You are nothing," I said, my voice amplified over his screaming. "You are just a bad memory." As they dragged him out, kicking and screaming, with Serena stumbling behind him, the room erupted into applause. It wasn't polite applause. It was thunderous. They were cheering for the victor. They were cheering for the blood. I stood there, the diamonds heavy on my head, and watched them disappear through the doors. I didn't feel happy. Happiness is too light a word. I felt absolute. Arthur walked up the stairs and stood beside me. He handed me a glass of champagne. "To the Queen," he whispered. I raised the glass. "To the end," I replied. The applause that had erupted when I ordered security to remove Derek and Serena was a sound of finality, or so I thought. But desperation is a powerful fuel, and a man who sees his entire existence crumbling will burn his last reserves of energy to fight gravity. As the two large guards dragged Derek toward the exit, his shoes skidding uselessly on the marble. Something snapped in his brain. It was the primal panic of a drowning animal, with a roar that sounded less like a man and more like a wounded bull. Derek twisted his body violently. He drove his elbow into the stomach of the guard on his left. A cheap shot born of pure hysteria. The guard grunted and loosened his grip for a fraction of a second. That was all Derek needed. He broke free, shoving the other guard into a waiter carrying a tray of crystal flutes. The crash of breaking glass punctuated the sudden scream of the crowd. Derek did not run for the door. He ran for me. He sprinted back up the aisle, his face purple, his bow tie hanging loose around his neck like a noose. He scrambled up the stairs to the stage, panting, his eyes wild and unfocused. He lunged for the podium, grabbing the microphone stand as if it were a weapon. "You are a fraud," Derek screamed, his voice cracking and booming through the speakers, causing a feedback screech that made the entire room wince. "You are a liar who hired you." Was it Sterling? How much is he paying you to humiliate me? Get off my stage. Get out of here right now. He reached out to grab my arm, to physically drag me away from the pulpit, but he never touched me. Before his fingers could graze the velvet of my sleeve, Elias stepped out from the shadows of the curtain. He didn't strike Derek. He simply caught Derek's wrist in midair, with a movement that was almost lazy in its efficiency. Elias twisted Derek's arm behind his back and forced him down. Derek's knees hit the stage floor with a hollow thud. His face was pressed against the polished wood, right at the hem of my dress. He was pinned, helpless, struggling like a beetle on its back. "Let me go!" Derek shrieked, saliva flying from his mouth. "Do you know who I am? I am the CEO of Vance Construction. I am the future of this city." I looked down at him. I adjusted the tiara on my head, ensuring it was perfectly straight. Then, I leaned into the microphone. "You are confused, Derek," I said, my voice calm, filling every corner of the silent ballroom. "You seem to be under the impression that you are speaking to your wife." I took a step back, allowing the spotlight to hit me fully. "Let me reintroduce myself. Since you clearly missed the memo, I am not just Zara Hartwood. I am Zara Hartwood Sterling." A gasp rippled through the room, louder this time, as the pieces finally clicked into place for the slow ones. "I am the sole heir to the Sterling estate," I continued, my voice gaining steel. "And I am the new owner of the West Harbor project, the land you stand on, the debt you owe, and the very air you are breathing right now. It all belongs to me." From the wings of the stage, a figure emerged. It was Arthur Sterling. He walked with the slow, deliberate gait of a lion. He stopped beside me, placing a hand on my shoulder, a public claiming, anointing me as his successor. "She speaks the truth," Arthur rumbled into his own lapel mic. "And anyone who questions her authority answers to me." The crowd erupted in a low buzz of shock. The king had returned, and he had brought a queen. Derek stopped struggling. He lifted his head, staring at Arthur, then at me. The color drained from his face so fast, it looked like he had been bled dry. "No," he whispered. "That is impossible. You are nobody. You are just Zara." "I was Zara," I corrected him. "You killed her." I turned to the technician in the booth. "Show them," I ordered. The massive screen behind me, which had previously shown the bank statements, went black. Then, a timestamp appeared in the corner. 2 days ago, 10 p.m. The footage was grainy, but the horror was high definition. It showed the hallway of our apartment building. It showed me, on my hands and knees, clutching my stomach. It showed the agony on my face. And then, it showed Derek. He was standing over me, looking at his watch. The audio, enhanced by Arthur's team, played through the concert-grade speakers of the Grand Hotel. "Honey, please, I hurt so much. The baby is coming. Don't go." My voice filled the room. Pitiful and broken. I saw women in the front row cover their mouths. I saw men look away, ashamed. Then came Derek's voice, cold, dismissive. "Don't be dramatic. Zara, I can't miss the chance to meet partners just because you don't know how to hold in the pain. The video showed him stepping around me. It showed him walking to the elevator. It showed him leaving his wife to die on the floor so he could go to a party. The silence in the ballroom broke. It didn't break with applause this time. It broke with fury. "Monster!" someone shouted from the back. "Scum!" another voice yelled. A white cloth napkin flew through the air and landed on Derek's head. Then another. Then a bread roll. The veneer of polite society cracked, and the mob mentality took over. They weren't just witnessing a downfall. They were judging a sin. Derek tried to shield his face, cowering on the floor. "It is fake. It is AI. She doctored it." "I did not doctor the financial records," I said. Cutting through his lies, I signaled the screen again. "You want to talk about fraud? Derek, let's talk about the loans." New documents appeared. Dozens of them. "These are the loan applications you submitted to 3 different banks," I explained, pointing to the signatures. "You claimed your company had assets of $2 million. The real number was negative $300,000. That is bank fraud, federal prison time. Derek, 5 to 10 years per count." I pointed to another document. "And this is the lien you placed on my mother's house. You forged my signature. But you didn't know that the pen you gave me, the one I used to sign, was filled with disappearing ink. The signature is gone. Derek, the contract is void. But your attempt to steal it, that is still a felony." Derek was shaking now, violently. He looked like a man having a seizure. He looked toward the side of the stage, searching for an ally. He locked eyes with Serena, who was still being held by security near the front row. "Serena," he cried out. Tell them we are partners. We can fix this. Your father will fix this." I turned my gaze to Serena. She was pale, her gold dress stained with wine, her hair a mess, but she still had that look of arrogant defiance in her eyes. She thought she was untouchable because of her last name. "Ah, yes, the partner," I said. "Serena Blackwood, the woman who convinced a husband to leave his wife in labor." "I didn't know," Serena shouted, trying to play the victim. "He told me you were fine. He told me the marriage was over. He lied to me too." "Did he?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Or did you script the lie for him?" I pulled a small black device from the pocket of my velvet gown. It was my phone. "You really should watch your purse." "Serena," I said. "You never know when someone might accidentally leave a recording device inside it." I pressed play. The audio was crystal clear this time. It was the conversation from the smoking area, just an hour ago. "Screw the auditors," Serena's voice hissed through the speakers. "And screw the company. If the project fails, we let Vance Construction take the fall. We let your wife take the fall. We walk away with the cash." The crowd gasped. This wasn't just adultery. This was conspiracy. This was premeditated destruction. "I want to be free of her," Derek's voice replied on the tape. "I want to be free of all of this." I stopped the recording. "Well," I said, looking down at Derek. "Congratulations, you are free." I looked at Serena. She was no longer defiant. She was looking at a spot in the crowd, her eyes wide with terror. A man was walking toward her. He was an older man, distinguished, with silver hair and a face that was currently red with an apoplectic rage. Robert Blackwood, the media tycoon, Serena's father. The crowd parted for him like the Red Sea. He marched up to his daughter. He didn't look at the security guards. He didn't look at me. He only saw her. "Daddy," Serena whimpered. "Daddy, please. It is not what it sounds like. She edited it. She is lying." Robert Blackwood did not speak. He raised his hand and, in front of 300 of the city's most powerful people, he slapped his daughter across the face. The sound was like a gunshot. Serena stumbled back, clutching her cheek, shock written all over her face. She had never been disciplined in her life. She had been given everything, and now, the hand that fed her had struck her down. "You stupid, arrogant girl," Robert shouted, his voice shaking with fury. I told you the accounts looked wrong. You lied to me. You stole from the holding company to fund this loser." He pointed a trembling finger at Derek, who was still pinned on the stage. "Daddy, I can explain," Serena cried. "Shut up," Robert roared. "You are done. Do you hear me? Done. I am freezing your trust fund in the morning. I am removing you from the board of directors. You want to play gangster with your boyfriend, fine. Go live on the street with him. Not 1 cent. Serena, not 1 single cent comes from me ever again." He turned to his personal assistant who was hovering behind him. "Issue a press release," Robert barked. "Blackwood Media has no association with Serena Blackwood or Vance Construction. We are cooperating fully with the Sterling investigation." He turned and walked away, leaving his daughter weeping in her wine-stained gold dress, utterly alone, on the stage. Derek watched it all happen. He watched his financial backing walk out the door. He watched his mistress get disowned. He looked at me, standing above him in diamonds and velvet, holding the deed to his life in my hand. He realized then, truly realized, that the game was over. "Zara," he whispered. It wasn't a demand this time. It was a plea. "Zara, please. The baby. Think about the baby. I am her father." I stepped closer to him. I leaned down so only he and the front row could hear me. "You gave up that title when you walked out the door," I said coldly. "Hope is a Sterling. She will grow up strong. She will grow up rich. And she will grow up knowing that her father was a cautionary tale about what happens when you mistake a diamond for a stepping stone." I stood up straight. "Get him out of my sight," I ordered. Elias hauled Derek to his feet. Derek didn't fight this time. His legs were dead weight. He was sobbing. Ugly. Heaving sobs that racked his entire body. He looked at the crowd, pleading for help, for recognition, for mercy. But he found none. The people who had drunk his champagne 10 minutes ago now looked at him with revulsion. They turned their backs. They checked their phones. He had ceased to exist in their world. As the guards dragged him through the center aisle, past the weeping Serena, past the debris of his ambition. I turned back to the microphone. The room was silent again, waiting. "I apologize for the interruption," I said, my voice smooth and composed, as if I hadn't just executed 2 people on live television. "The refreshments will be served in the garden. Please, enjoy the evening. The future of Port Royal is bright." I signaled the conductor of the orchestra. "Play something cheerful," I said. "A waltz, I think." The music swelled. The lights came back up. The chatter resumed, frantic and excited, feeding on the carcass of the scandal. I turned to Arthur. He was smiling. It was a terrifying smile. "Well done, my queen," he said. I looked at the empty doorway where my husband used to be. I felt a lightness in my chest, a void where the pain used to be. It was cold. Yes, but it was clean. "It is not done yet," I said. "He is broke. He is humiliated. But he is still free." Arthur tapped his watch. "Give it 10 minutes," he said. "The police commissioner is on his way. He hates fraud." I took a sip of champagne. It tasted like starlight and victory. "Perfect," I said. "I can wait 10 minutes." The waltz I had requested was a piece by Strauss, light and airy, swirling through the ballroom like perfume, but the music was abruptly cut short not by the conductor, but by the jarring, rhythmic flashing of blue and red lights flooding through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the heavy oak doors, which had closed behind Derek and Serena only moments ago, burst open again. This time, it was not a grand entrance of royalty. It was the heavy, synchronized march of the Economic Crimes Unit. They moved with the grim efficiency of reapers. There were 10 of them, wearing windbreakers emblazoned with the word "police" in bold yellow letters. Leading them was Detective Miller, a man Arthur had introduced me to briefly before the gala. He looked like a man who enjoyed his job, especially when his job involved taking down arrogance. They did not have to look far for their targets. Derek and Serena were still in the foyer, arguing with the security guards who had ejected them. When Derek saw the badges, he didn't run. He froze. It was the paralysis of a man who realizes that the nightmare is not waking up. The nightmare is the reality. Derek Vance. Detective Miller's voice carried into the silent ballroom. You are under arrest. Derek laughed. It was a high, fractured sound. Arrest for what being broke? That is a civil matter. Officer, you can't arrest me for debt. We are not arresting you for debt, Mr. Vance, Miller said, pulling a pair of steel handcuffs from his belt. We are arresting you for bank fraud, wire fraud, and aggravated forgery. Forgery, Derek sputtered as the cold metal clicked around his wrists. I never forged anything. My wife signed those papers. She signed the mortgage. She signed the loan guarantees. I walked down the steps of the stage. The crowd parted for me, their eyes wide, terrified, and fascinated. I stopped at the threshold of the ballroom, looking out into the foyer. Actually, Derek, I said, my voice carrying over the distance. I didn't. He whipped his head around, his eyes bulging. You did. I watched you. I gave you the pen. You gave me a pen, I corrected him, leaning against the doorframe, the black velvet of my dress drinking the light. But I used my own, a Mont Blanc, with a very special type of ink. It is a proprietary formula from the Sterling Labs. It oxidizes and vanishes completely upon contact with treated paper after 4 hours. I smiled. A small, cold expression. The papers you sent to the bank this morning, the ones you used to secure that bridge loan, when the loan officer opened the envelope an hour ago, he found blank pages, just empty white sheets with no signature, no guarantee, and no collateral. But you had already taken the money. Derek's jaw dropped. He realized the trap. Without my signature, he hadn't secured a loan. He had stolen bank funds based on documents that technically no longer existed. He had committed theft, pure and simple. You set me up, he whispered. I just gave you a pen. Derek, I said. You wrote your own sentence. The detective shoved him forward. Derek stumbled, falling to his knees on the plush carpet of the foyer. The posture of a king was gone. He was a beggar now. He looked up at me. Tears were streaming down his face, mixing with the sweat and the ruin of his makeup. He looked at the diamonds around my neck. He looked at the power radiating off me, and he played his last, desperate card. Zara, he sobbed. Zara, please, I am sorry. I was wrong. Okay, I was stupid. But think about the family. Think about Hope. The mention of her name made the air in the room drop 10 degrees. She needs her father. Zara, Derek pleaded, crawling forward on his knees until the detective held him back. I made a mistake, but I love her. I want to see her grow up. Don't let her grow up with her dad in prison. Please, for Hope. I looked down at him. I remembered the way he had looked at the ultrasound photo and asked how much the delivery would cost. I remembered the way he had called her a baggage on the phone with Serena. I remembered the way he had almost knocked over her cradle in his rage to find the jewelry. You are mistaken, I said, my voice devoid of any emotion. Hope does not have a father. She has a donor. I stepped closer, towering over him. You abandoned your rights the night you walked out that door to go fishing, I said. You left us to die. A father protects, Derek. A father provides. You did neither. You are just a biological accident. I signaled to Arthur, who was standing behind me. My lawyers filed the paperwork this morning, I continued. The name on her birth certificate has already been changed. She is not Hope Vance. She is Hope Sterling. She will never carry the name of a thief. Derek collapsed. His head hit the carpet, and he let out a wail of pure despair. It was the sound of a man who had reached for the sun and found only the vacuum of space. Get him up, Detective Miller ordered, as they hauled Derek to his feet. Another pair of officers approached Serena. She was trying to blend into the wallpaper, inching toward the exit. Serena Blackwood, the officer said. No, she squeaked. I am just a bystander. I didn't sign anything. We have the wire transfer records, ma'am, the officer said, snapping the cuffs on her wrists. And we have the audio recording of you conspiring to defraud your father's company. That is embezzlement and corporate espionage. You are coming with us." Serena screamed as the metal bit into her skin. "Derek, do something. Tell them it was your idea." Derek looked at her. The love, the lust, the partnership, it was all gone. In its place was a burning, toxic hatred. "You witch," Derek spat at her. "This is your fault. You made me do it. You pushed me." "I pushed you," Serena shrieked back, struggling against the officers. "You were desperate. You were a loser who needed a mommy to pay his bills. I hate you. I wish I had never met you." They were dragged out together, screaming accusations at each other, their true love dissolving into a puddle of mutual loathing. It was a fitting end. They deserved each other, but they would have to enjoy each other's company from separate cells. As the police cars sped away, sirens wailing into the night, Arthur placed a hand on my shoulder. "It is done," he said. "Not quite," I replied. "What about the company?" "Vance Construction is finished," Arthur said. "I triggered the debt clauses 10 minutes ago. We are seizing all assets, the trucks, the equipment, the office lease, everything." "Good," I said. "Liquidate it, sell every hammer and every nail." "And the proceeds?" Arthur asked. "Start a foundation," I said, looking at the empty doorway. "The Hope Foundation. It will provide legal aid and emergency housing for women who have been abandoned by their partners during pregnancy. Let Derek's legacy pay for the very thing he tried to destroy." Arthur smiled. "A poetic justice." 3 months later, the ocean was a sheet of turquoise glass. Stretching out to meet the horizon in a perfect, unbroken line, the air smelled of salt and freedom. The only sound was the gentle lapping of water against the hull and the cry of a distant seagull. I sat on the sun deck of the Lady Vengeance, a 180-foot super yacht that Arthur had purchased the week after the trial. It was the exact model Derek had kept a picture of in his office, his dream boat that he was going to buy once he became rich. Now, I owned it, and he was sitting in a 6x8 cell in the state penitentiary, serving the first year of a 15-year sentence. I adjusted my sunglasses and looked over at the shaded area of the deck. A white cradle sat there, rocking gently with the motion of the ship. Inside, Hope was fast asleep. She was 3 months old now, round and rosy, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that held the whole world. She was safe, she was loved, and she was the heir to an empire. Next to the cradle sat Arthur. The most feared corporate raider on the East Coast was wearing a pair of floral swim trunks and a bucket hat. He held a fishing rod in his hand, his line cast out into the deep blue water. He wasn't fishing for status. He wasn't fishing to escape his family. He was fishing because he was happy. "Any bites, Grandpa?" I called out. Arthur turned and grinned. "Not a nibble. And I don't care one bit. This is the life. Zara, why didn't I retire 20 years ago?" "Because you were too busy building a kingdom for her," I said, nodding toward the baby. "True," Arthur chuckled. "But the kingdom is in good hands now. You ran that board meeting last week like a shark. I think the CFO is still afraid of you." I smiled, taking a sip of my iced tea. He tried to hide a 2% variance in the logistics budget. I just asked him to explain it. My phone buzzed on the small table next to me. I picked it up. It was a notification from the prison communication system. "Inmate 8940-V Vance. Derek has requested a visitation. Status urgent. Message. I have information about the accounts. Please. Just 5 minutes. I need to see her." I looked at the message. I pictured him in his orange jumpsuit, desperate, clinging to the hope that he could still manipulate me, that he could still use his daughter as a bargaining chip. He didn't have information. He had regrets, but regrets are not a currency I accept. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sadness. I felt nothing. He was a stranger, a ghost from a life that belonged to someone else. I pressed the block contact button. Then, for good measure, I permanently deleted the account associated with his number. I stood up and walked to the railing. The metal was warm under my hands. I looked down at the water, churning white and blue against the side of the yacht. "Everything okay?" Arthur asked, watching me. "Perfect," I said. I looked at the phone in my hand. It was just a piece of technology, but it was also a tether. I wound my arm back and threw it. The phone spun through the air, catching the sunlight for a brief second, before splashing silently into the ocean. It sank instantly, taking the last connection to Derek Vance down to the dark, cold bottom of the sea where it belonged. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the clean ocean air. I was not just rich in money, I was rich in the things that actually mattered. I had my dignity, I had my family, I had a daughter who would never know the sound of her parents screaming at each other. I turned back to Arthur and Hope. The baby shifted in her sleep, letting out a small, contented sigh. I walked over and kissed her forehead. "Sleep tight, little one," I whispered. "No one can hurt us now." I looked out at the horizon, where the sun was beginning to dip, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold. I was no longer the woman on the floor. I was no longer the wife in the shadows. I was Zara Hartwood Sterling. And as the yacht cut through the waves, moving toward a future that was entirely my own, I realized the truth. I wasn't just a survivor. I was untouchable. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please leave a comment below and share your thoughts on Zara's revenge. If you enjoyed this journey, please make sure to subscribe to Sweet Rose Drama, like the video, and hit the hype button to help this story reach even more listeners. Your support means the world to us.